today is Percy's birthday, the day we are shooting it.
Mm-hmm.
And we totally should have said something last pod, just because I know YouTube goes up a little bit later. So,
Yeah.
but at least the day we're shooting it today is Percy's birthday. And so the fandom is abuzz posting their posts. I think I even saw the Empire State Building's official post.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
I never
yeah,
remember when Percy's birthday is, so I
yeah.
was surprised.
Yeah, we were talking about this with fictional birthdays. It's like, I mean, they have to be a date you already think of for something else for you to really
Yeah.
pay attention. Or at least for us, we're both not the type of people that are like, oh, it's Percy's birthday and remember on our own. We remember
Hmm.
when we see everybody else posting about it.
Yeah, like when if you asked me like when his birthday is, like when we're reading one of the books or we're talking about it, then I know when it is. In the same way that when I was into Harry Potter, I always knew when his birthday was because in the context of like the story, but I
Hmm.
don't remember it for any other reason.
Yeah,
Like so I don't think about it in like actual real life until people start saying it. And I'm like, "Oh, it is today, isn't it?" Cuz
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, they're just like not real people, so I just don't think about it like that. And I never like go into the idea of trying to figure out how old they are because I'm like they're not real.
Yeah, yeah, and that gets a little weird too because like with Harry Potter there's the whole thing of like it was written years before and it's supposed to end like the epilogue is supposed to be modern day.
Mhm.
So yeah, figuring out that age to me that's just too much math involved. And then
No.
yeah.
I have no like desire to know that kind of stuff. I'm not that
Yeah.
kind of person who like needs to know these things. So they've just have never I just don't care. Like literally the book, I read the book and Rick tells us how old Percy is and that's all I need to know. That's all I care about.
Yeah, I feel like time stops in the universe between books for me. Like right
Hmm.
now because we just finished Battle of the Labyrinth, we're still there in my mind. Like Percy's still that age right now.
Yeah, and that's part of Becky was talking about it today about how weird it like she just doesn't know how to grasp the sort of concept either,
Hmm.
which is understandable. But she was basically saying like they kind of try to keep the timeline like more like close together or whatever for people because so many people throughout the years start reading these books.
Hmm.
And so it's like they want to keep everything where if you're like a new person reading them now, it wouldn't it's not that far along if you've been reading them since like 2005 so that it doesn't feel like you're like way behind. That's basically like the general idea and I'm like, yeah, that just that's always helpful.
So for today, we read some of the kind of supplementary texts. We read a little bit of the Demigod Diaries and a little bit of the Demigod Files. I mean, like we basically read the whole thing of the Demigod Files because
Mhm.
I mean, everything that wasn't a short story was like little cute interviews and Percy's project on each of the gods. It was kind of cute.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it
So.
came out in 2009
Mhm.
before the Last Olympian came out. Like the very end of it has like a sneak peek to
Yeah.
it. And so he wrote all those stories to try to help set up the original one, which I think was I can understand why people really like talked about these and like wanted people to read them.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they existed until some of
Yeah.
like the podcasts and stuff would I remember one of the podcasts asked one of the kids, a Walker, like which one of your short stories is your favorite one and he had to tell them that he's never read them before. And I was like, yeah, I never read them until now either. I don't know, I just always skip over the like short stories a lot of the time.
Yeah, it like sometimes they have no bearing on canon. The one that I think we should start out with Luke's diary just because it's like the shortest.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like that one, it's gonna have a bearing on canon, like at least TV show canon, more so because they're probably going to take that story and then make it bigger. Um, I was trying to figure out on my own because so Luke's diary in the Demigod Diaries, it takes us from after Luke and Talia had already teamed up, and then to basically right after they find Annabeth. And I
Hmm.
know that then we get the story of one of their adventures, they ran into a cyclops. And that's why Annabeth has the fear the cyclops tricked the three of them, and Annabeth ended up having to save them, if I remember correctly. I
Hmm.
can't remember where that story shows up. Like, we already read it, didn't we?
They talk about it in
Yeah.
Sea of Monsters. They don't ever like explicitly like show it. Like they're gonna show it on the show.
Yeah.
But the last part of his diary when he is referencing like, oh, maybe after we stop at like our hideout place that they also mention in Sea of Monsters, like that's the place
Hmm.
that they stop at when the whole Hydra stuff happens.
Yeah.
And so like they anyway, he talks about like, oh, maybe we can go visit my mom. That is when like all of that happens.
Hmm.
Is they go to visit his mom, then he sees Hermes for the first time and screams at him. Then he goes on a rampage and attacks all these things, which leads to them getting stuck with like the Cyclops and Annabeth, 7-year-old tiny little Annabeth, having to go in and save him and Thalia.
Hmm.
And like Grover finds them somewhere during that time, and then they get back to camp, and then they die. That's part of something that I thought was interesting about.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought one thing I thought was really interesting about the Luke's Diary short story is that people have always talked about it as like, oh, if you read Demigod Diaries, you'll like, you know, feel more empathetic or something
Hmm.
towards Luke. And I was like, no, this
Yeah,
did
I
not
knew that would happen.
this did not help at all. And it's kind of interesting to see like how if you go into it wanting there to be something that makes you feel more for him, I can see like places where people tried to do that, but it just didn't make sense, especially like the ending part with like we'll go through it all, but still like the ending part with Annabeth.
Hmm.
That's like the part that people usually quote and stuff, and I'm like, this is like ominous because it's literally Luke saying like I better do a good job taking care of this family, and he references the exact moment when he fucks it all up.
Yeah.
And like us as like the audience knows that already. Like we know exactly when that happens. Even so I was like, this is weird that people read this story and they think that you'll come out of it liking him better or thinking that there was like more to what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So the thing I wanted to start from the beginning of his is that it was really interesting reading the story from like his point of view
Hmm.
because like our friend Sophia is in my chat already, and I told her right after when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know if this is because of this is just how he is, or if it's because I'm used to reading Percy's perspective, but he
Hmm.
is so mean,
Yeah.
and like he is so mean and like defeatist and like dismissive, and I was like, this is it's just weird, like compared to reading usually Percy's perspective. It's one of those things of like, yeah, Rick Riordan can definitely write from different points of view because his narration or whatever doesn't sound anything like Percy.
Hmm.
It's so just like I don't even know what. And I was just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting to read because Luke wouldn't be anything like Percy. But it was interesting to like remember what Percy's was like and like think about like what would Percy have said during this part instead of what he said or like what he was thinking.
Hmm.
But it was very interesting and overall like the Demigod Diary story, they've already said that they've said a couple times that they used it like the writers used it to write the flashback scenes. And so I'm sure we're going to see this whole interaction with how do you pronounce his name?
I have no idea. We'll just call him Hal.
Hal.
Hal
I'm
is
just gonna call him
fine.
Hal because they start calling
Yeah.
him Hal by the end of the story. Where I'm sure we're gonna see like that whole situation with Hal, and then
Hmm.
and we're probably gonna see we're gonna see like the Cyclops stuff and
Yeah.
probably what happens when they get to camp and whatnot. But they used it for that like a couple months ago. Somebody asked Becky about it, and she said again like we used the Demigod Diaries as like how we wrote the flashback scenes for Thalia and Luke and stuff. And so it's not like the person was basically saying like almost like, how could you not use this stuff? And she's like, well, we did.
Yeah.
And so just to like keep that in mind, that's why this stuff is interesting, because we're likely going to see some of this sort of thing. And also it likely just like helped them figure out how to like show this time of their life as a way to like introduce this version of Luke, and also Salt and Thalia, and like why Annabeth has like the issues that she does, and like why she has a hard time like giving up on Luke and all that.
Yeah.
But the general like premise of the story when it first starts is it's Luke already with Thalia, and they talk about how they like randomly found each other in LA when she had run away from home. He had been on the run for a couple years. He talks about how he ran away from home when he was 9, and that this is one of those things that I like wonder about, of like who told him about Hermes,
Yeah.
because his mom is like, mentally ill, so I'm not sure that she could really tell him and like explain to him these things. But even though he knew, like, because he knows, even though he didn't meet Hermes yet, he knows the whole time that he's a Hermes child,
Hmm.
and that he's a child of a great god, to the point that when he's 9 and runs away, he already knows that he is and just decides, like, I just am gonna go because I don't want to do this anymore. Um, and he doesn't know about camp. It doesn't seem like he does at this point in the story. It feels like as you read the story, there's a couple times where I'm like, I feel like Thalia knows about camp.
Yeah.
Because you can tell there are like certain reactions she's having to things, where you can tell she's almost like she's not wanting to tell him about that yet for whatever reason, but it doesn't seem like he knows about camp yet.
Hmm.
And so it's this interesting thing of like, I don't know who told him about Hermes if he never actually met him. Like he mentions, it makes me wonder if like maybe he did when he was younger, but he doesn't really remember it or something, because otherwise it's like somebody had to have explained it to him. And maybe they explain that sort of thing when we actually like have the whole interaction with his mom in The Last Olympian.
Yeah.
But I know that I just made me wonder, like, I wonder who explained this kind of stuff to him, because Thalia knows about that, but her mom is the one that told her,
Yeah.
because she was with her mom for similar-ish amount of time, basically as Luke was with his mom.
Hmm.
But her mom was actually like, she was still addicted to alcohol and things like that, but she could still talk to her about these things. And I just, whenever they were talking about stuff with like being a demigod and how hard it was, like when there's a part in the story when Luke mentions that when he first ran away, that he would like find people and he would tell them about like who his dad was, and they would be like, oh my god, that would be so cool, and he would just like leave.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder, like, did he try to talk to them and explain like what
Yeah.
was really going on? Because most people would understand if you tell them that like your dad is like a deadbeat, for why, or like that you're being attacked by things because of your dad that you've never met before. They would like understand that. But it also felt like he just like would leave because it was just easier, I guess. But it just was interesting to read these two, and even Annabeth at the very end. All of them know that they're demigods,
Hmm.
and they all know that their parents are these gods, and that's why they're being attacked, even as hard as what they're doing is. Like, all three of them were homeless. All three of them ran away, like, by choice from home. So that's like a lot of traumatic things that they've experienced. But I was also just thinking, like, how much harder all of this stuff would have been if they had no idea,
Hmm.
because so many of the other kids don't don't have any idea of like what's going on. And like at
Yeah.
least for these kids, they at least knew why.
Yeah.
At least like he knew why this kind of stuff was going on. And yeah, that like the reason why it made him mad and all this sort of stuff, but at least there was a reason. Like, imagine how hard it would be if you all these things were happening but you didn't know why.
Yeah.
That would be even more difficult. the first line of the whole thing is that they're following a goat, and so of course like that immediately makes you think like, are they, is that Grover?
Yeah.
But it's not Grover. It's,
Yeah. It's
how do you pronounce that
Amalthea.
word?
I think it's Amalthea, and Amalthea is known for. We talked last week about, like Zeus's origin. He was hidden away on a mountain and he was fed goat milk. She's the one who fed him.
Okay. Yeah, and so overall, like Thalia is talking about like this is like a goat from Zeus, and she even tells him like the goat is what like led me to you, and he was like, what? Like he had
Yeah.
no idea that there was. He thought that they just like met by chance or whatever, but it turns out that that thing like led Thalia to Luke so that they could travel together. And so they're like following it, and Thalia is like, I know this is going to mean something, that they want me to go wherever it's going, and they don't like know, what exactly is going on, but they just kind of follow this like mysterious disappearing goat
Yeah.
until they get to I forget, Richmond, Virginia, I think, because it has like a statue of Robert E. Lee
Hmm.
in it. And one thing I thought was funny was when they said that the goat had like Pepsi products.
Yeah.
And I read that and I was like, can I get some Diet Mountain Dew from the goat, please? It just reminds me of how like everything he kind of sees, he doesn't like it, in a way of like he looks at everything in like the most negative sort of way, I guess. And it's just interesting to see like how he thinks about stuff like that when Percy and a lot of the other kids even they don't think about stuff like that necessarily. And it's just, I forget, there's a part in the beginning, and he says it again later on, that I was just like, where he's talking about that Thalia, when Thalia wants to go after the goat, and
Hmm.
he doesn't want to go after the goat because he's like, this is probably going to be some mess or something,
Yeah.
and I don't want to go after it. He talks about how he like lost the weapon that he had, so now all he has is like a golf club. And like,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is a pretty good weapon, but not helpful against like monsters. Against humans, that would be fine. But other than that, they don't really have like weapons. And she's talking, and he's just saying like, I don't want to go wherever this goat is wanting us to go, because it's probably going to be like some kind of trap or something or other.
Hmm.
But the way he put it was like, Thalia always gets her way.
Hmm.
And at first, it was like, I was like, well, she is these are like the golden children of this world. And so you could say that. But then I was thinking about it. I was like, supposed to be your best friend. You should want to do things that your best friend wants to do, not act like you're doing them a favor for
Yeah.
going along with what you want, but like because they're your friend and you like respect their opinion. But either way, there's like this one line during this part, I think, where he mentioned, just offhand, he's just saying something about his dad. Oh, when he's like unlocking the door, and he shows it, that's like one of his powers. The one
Yeah.
thing from that made me think of is, I wonder if that's like part of how they're going to show him like getting into camp in season 2, that he can
Oh.
somehow unlock something, since that is a power that he has. And I can't remember another time in the books, at least, where he like actively uses it, but he does have it. And
Hmm.
it would be a very easy power for them to kind of have him act out, because they wouldn't have to do too much like special effect wise to show him being able to like unlock things that they're not supposed to be able to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
either
that
way,
was a
like
couple
the,
sound effects away, the clicking of the gears.
yeah, and like the goat wants them to go into this locked house, and so they go in there.
Hmm.
And there's this line he has where he's talking about like being a Hermes kid, or like Hermes being his dad. And he says something like, he stole my ability to have a good life and my mom's sanity. And he says like something else. But I was just like, oh my goodness. Like,
Yeah, because it was part of his, like, the reason he has that is because Hermes is a god of thieves. And so it's like, ability to break into things is kind of necessary for that sometimes.
hmm,
So he can literally connect to a lock and feel all of the little pins and stuff inside of it click. And yeah, he was talking about like I don't like to mention this part because it's something I dislike about my dad. The stealing of her sanity, like it's an interesting way to put it, and I haven't revisited his mom in a long time because like it's been what like 15 years since I read the books. So I don't quite remember the story so well, other than the bits and pieces we've talked about. But the idea that like he just kind of blames everything on him and he hasn't
Yeah,
even met him at this point.
no. He just blames everything on him. It's not actually Hermes' fault that
Hmm.
of what happened to his mom. Like we're gonna read The Last Olympian, but Hermes tries to convince his mom not to do
Okay.
the thing that makes her end up like that. Um,
Yeah.
and I can't remember if Hermes. We'll get to it when we actually read it, but I can't remember right now, at least, if Hermes is able to tell him that, or if, because I feel like even if he did, Luke wouldn't have believed him,
Hmm.
because he just kind of uses Hermes as like a good scapegoat for everything that he doesn't, that he's angry about. It's
Yeah.
easy to just blame him for everything. And like Hermes isn't there. Like that is a valid point to be angry at him about, that
Hmm.
he's not there. And we know that he said that he wasn't there because he knew that like something would happen with Luke's fate, and he just, it was like too hard for him to be around knowing that he was going to die one day. Um but still, like it's interesting how he does that, how like even the other kids that don't like their parents that aren't around, like how Percy talks about Poseidon, he doesn't quite like turn him into like a monster kind of thing in the
Hmm.
same way. Like, yeah, he doesn't like Poseidon, he doesn't respect Poseidon because he's never been around and he abandoned his mother. That's
Hmm.
really the main thing of what he's upset about Poseidon for.
Yeah.
He even says it like, it's one thing to like not be around for me, but I'm never going to let you get away with not being around for my mother. So he doesn't exactly like Poseidon, but he also has no idea who he is either. And so he's not really using him as like this, and he could. Like that's like the always like the wild thing about these stories is that like Percy at this point in his life was, if Luke is 14, Percy is 7, the age that Annabeth was. That was when Gabe started abusing him.
Yeah.
And so if Percy wanted to turn Poseidon into like the source of all of his anger like that, considering at that point he was already getting kicked out of schools and he didn't know why, and all these bad things kept happening and he didn't know why, and he thought that he was hallucinating
Hmm.
and he had no idea, and his stepdad was abusing him whenever he was around his mom that he didn't get to see very often because by this age was right around the time when he started being like sent away and stuff. It
Yeah.
would make sense that he would use that, but he doesn't. So it's always interesting to see like how they just react differently to similar things. And overall, though, I had to just like point out the fact that the whole line he says about like, oh, he stole my chance to have a good life. That is not true.
Yeah.
Like, I really just like need to make the definitive point that even if your life has been horrible for the majority of your life, there is never an end point where your life is just ruined forever and you might as well just like give up now because it's never going to get better. Like,
Hmm.
no. That is like fundamentally against every single thing I could ever possibly believe in or even just think in my life. Like, my life was god awful. Like, the worst you can possibly ever imagine. Just like trust me on that for like 36 years. And I'm 40. It
Yeah.
was really, really bad. Like, majority of the time. There were some good things here and there, but majority of the time it was horrible. And so if I believed that, and like there were times when I would be really sad and like depressed and stuff, where I would think things like that.
Hmm.
But then I would, like something good would happen, or like I would get like hopeful again about something, and I would stop believing that. But either way, it's just like, just because you have like a horrible parent or like a bad childhood or something, even as bad as situations like this where you have to run away from home, it doesn't mean that your life is just going to be horrible forever.
Yeah.
It's going to be different maybe from other people that didn't have to do the same thing, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
But either way, they go into this place and then they meet Hal, or Halcyon Green is his name. He's an Apollo kid.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting, the general like theme, I guess, that Rick is doing, where Halcyon Green's story is somebody who is being manipulated by monsters in some way. Like the general thing that they realize when they get into this house is that they're like trapped in this house. The door like locks them from the inside and they can't get out. There's like curtains that like somehow like burn acid almost on Thalia when she accidentally like touches them. And so they're trapped in this house, and Halcyon Green has like these monster things with him
Yeah, were they
that,
Crota? Was that the big
yeah,
name? Yeah.
something like that. And like he can't talk, like physically talk. And so his voice comes out of the monster things. And he is, anyway, that he's basically being manipulated by them in some way. Like he feels like he can't leave or can't get away or whatever because they have some sort of like control over him in some way. And then like the Cyclops story is a story of a Cyclops using like the sound of somebody's voice to like trick them to go somewhere where they normally wouldn't. And I'm like, I just see like this theme that Rick is doing with these backstory stories about Luke, that it involves like manipulation in some way,
Yeah.
and like people using like someone's like empathy or care for somebody against them. And I'm like, that's just interesting that there's like this backdrop of that with his like kind of backstory stories, that there's somebody trying to use that in some way. And he doesn't really respond to it the way that, at least in this story, he doesn't respond to it the way that like other kids would. It's really interesting in the course of this story how he learns like every possible lesson the wrong way. I was like, this is really interesting
Yeah.
how he's learning all of the wrong lessons. And okay. And especially considering like what I'm trying to say, like what happens eventually with him and Kronos is that he willingly gives his power away completely to somebody else
Mm-hmm.
because he's just so like hungry for revenge that he just like allows them to do that, which is
Yeah.
really interesting considering the context of this story. But either way,
Yes.
they hear like Hal's voice that sounds like a human voice that needs help or something. And so they go upstairs and they find him, and his voice is coming out of the animal things, the monster things, but he's explaining to them like basically that he is a Apollo kid, but when he was younger, he saw like a prophecy. Since he's an Apollo kid, they can do that. And he saw a prophecy of this girl that he knew that was going to die and like be hit by a car, I think he said. And he, cared about the girl and liked her, and so he told her about it. And because he told her about it, she was able to like change like her fate. And so in order to have him like never do that ever again, Apollo like put him in this house with these creatures where all these different demigods come in like and are lured there for one reason or another. And he like his voice is the thing that like makes them think that there might be somebody safe there or someone to talk to or something. And he has this role in them, and he can't, and basically over and over again is just like taught the lesson in the most like cruel way possible, basically, that he can't like change people's fate, that he can't
Yeah.
like do anything to like help these people, because you can't mess with things like that. You can't change people's fate like that. And to the point that he like doesn't even try to use any of his powers or anything for like decades because of how just like how demoralized it is
Mm-hmm.
to watch like people come in and be hopeful that they'll find a way to get out, and then them eventually realizing that they can't get out and not being able to figure it out, and then dying over and
Yeah.
over again for decades. You can understand like why he would feel like that. Like that would be really hard. Like every day just watching that sort of thing happen over and over and over again. Is there anything in like the mythology of that person to talk about,
It's
like the girl or anything like that?
No, the girl is totally Hal is completely made up. The girl is made up, and Lucrata, it's like all we have is a physical description. There's a couple of beasts in these stories that we read for today that are basically a really bad game of telephone where certain people wrote history and like kind of ethnography writings
Mm-hmm.
about animals that they heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of them where it can mimic voices and lures people in that way. So that's basically all there is to that story. There's not like a ton mythologically happening here.
Yeah. Okay. So they get in there and um, they're trying to find, of course, they're trying to find a way out, but they can't think of anything.
Yeah, the
Um,
curtains like grab Thalia's hands and like turn into goo. The doors are magically locked behind them, so
mhm.
they
and
there's no escape.
and they like get on the internet and they're like trying to look up things that they could try to make out of the things that they have to try to make a sort of weapon or something like that, but they
Yeah.
don't. They use his computer, which probably had like dial up or something. And
Yeah, he's been in there for years.
yeah,
So
and they're trying to like look up basically just like the things they have to see like is there a way we could like make some sort of
yeah,
weapon or
Alia did
something.
have a weapon, I think. She had mace that turned into a spear.
Mhm.
And when they were trying to figure this out, they kind of like get through how, like, at some point he mentions a treasure. And he's like, I thought you guys came in because of the treasure. And so they decide to kind of take a side detour to look into that. Luke ends up having to pick a lock for that as well. Um, and he knows that most people didn't survive the booby traps to get even to the third part of the lock because it has some sort of poison gas.
Mhm.
But he's able to get through it without activating it. And they take out a silver bracelet, which he starts thinking of Almothea again, and he's like, I remember there's a detail about Almothea I'm forgetting.
Oh yeah, cuz okay, one some of the stuff before this that I forgot was because he's like, "Oh, you guys aren't here for the treasure?" Cuz he said most of the kids that showed up there like heard that there was treasure there, and that's why they even came into the house in the first place. And then the other part I wanted to mention was just when Hal is like telling his whole story, Luke is just so mean. there's just
Yeah,
there's just zero empathy for him at all. And it was like
yeah,
shocking. Like when he's talking about how Hal is telling him that he's basically in there starving, that the only food that the monsters ever give him are the things that he gets from like the kids who die. And otherwise, if no kids go in there and then die and have like food left over in like their packs or something, he doesn't eat. And he doesn't have any way of getting away. He's trapped in this house too. If nobody can get out once they're in there, it's not like he can just walk out and leave. And so he's talking about how he's forever trapped in here watching like demigods die, that the only thing he can do is like eat food so he can like stay alive for like another day or so when they do die.
hmm
And Luke is just thinking about like how pathetic he is, that he
yeah,
doesn't try to fight back against like the monsters controlling him, and how mad he is at the idea like, oh, when I die he's just going to eat all my food. And it's like, if he doesn't do that he will die too. And also like, what do you mean, like he's trapped here? Like, are you this mean to people that are like prisoners of war or something? Like
yeah. The
he's
closest
trapped
thing
here.
to empathy that Luke expresses during this whole like thing with Hal is anger at Apollo of like, why would he be mad at his son for saving somebody? Like that
Yeah.
makes no sense. Which like true, but that's literally the only thing he can get out of that story.
Yeah, and that's all he gets out of that story. And is that, and is just so like judgmental about the situation that Hal is in. And it's so ironic considering the situation that he ends up in later. Like Hal wasn't actually killing people
hmm
like you do. Like
Yeah.
you kill people for somebody else. You don't just steal like their food, you steal like their entire life, like because they are now dead
hmm
after you interact with them. or almost dead or whatever you want to say about any of that stuff. Like he has no other option. Like Hal in this situation is like stuck here by the gods. He can't leave. And so it's like he can't get away. And he has no other place. All he can, if he doesn't eat, he's just gonna die. And nobody wants to just like die. And so he's just doing that so that he can try to like stay alive a little bit longer to try to figure out, you know, some other way out of this situation. And just the idea that Luke is sitting there being like how he's just thinking about how like pathetic he is and like I can't believe he didn't try to do something more or try to fight back more and all of this stuff. And it's just like what was he supposed to do? You're supposed to have empathy for people when they're in like a bad situation, not like just think how I would make a different decision. No, you wouldn't. Like
Yeah.
we actually know for sure that you wouldn't. But it was just like wild hearing that he even like says something to him during that part. He says some like mean comment to him like out loud. And that just makes Hal like really sad and is like, yeah, you're right. I am really pathetic or whatever he says. And I was just like, oh my God. And I was just like, can anyone else talk to Hal? Literally anyone on the planet. Can anyone else talk to Hal and like make him not feel like worse than he already feels? Like it's it feels a lot like similar to like coming up to somebody who's stuck in an abusive situation and it's just like I wouldn't be stuck in a relationship like that. And like that whole thing, like I hate anyone who does that so much. But it feels like that kind of a situation of like I wouldn't be stupid enough to get controlled by these monsters and then eat children's food after they die and I'm forced to watch them die. And I'm like, no, you're the one who actually watches the children die while you stab them to death.
Yes.
Like I guess that's different. But either way, even at this point, it's just like, oh my God, can somebody teach him how to have empathy for other people or like even just think about how other people also go through bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you have had a bad life, maybe that sounds like a pretty like horrible existence to save one girl's life and then your dad like traps you in this situation for decades after that as the only way to like basically punish you enough to never change fate because of how dangerous it is to do that. And despite this like story that like hits you over the head like 50,000 times about how you like knowing your fate is a bad idea and you can't change fate and don't look into your own fate because it never goes the way that you think it will, and knowing that kind of thing just like gets in your head and makes you make weird decisions. He still doesn't actually retain any of that information.
Yeah.
Because all the things that like when we get to the end I'll talk about like what happens more like later on, but it's just like he literally Hal went out of his way to try to help you from making the same mistakes that he did, and you just make all of them anyway. It's just like, oh my God. And so either way, they're like they realize that they have enough stuff to make Greek fire. But Greek fire is really strong and potent. And so they realize like if they use it, it's going to burn down the entire house, including them and everyone inside of it. But they're like, well, we have to try. And like they're also like messing with the bracelet. They can't figure out like Thalia's bracelet. They can't figure out what it is. Like it's obviously something important. At this point she's talking about how like Zeus is her dad and things like that. And Hal's like, Zeus is your dad and stuff like that. And so she's talking about that, and she's talking about how like the goat, like, you know, or the goat like sent her to Luke before, so she knows it has to mean something. They just can't figure out what it is, and they're trying to figure it out. They can't figure it out, and they're like, whatever. Let's just try to do this Greek fire thing. And I remember the line that I remember is that Luke says that he looks at Hal when he ends up he like can't talk out loud, and so this whole part he's like writing down like in his diary like what he's saying when they're not in like the room with the computer, so that he can tell them what he's thinking, since he obviously doesn't want the animals to be like saying what they're doing out loud when they're trying to plot to kill them. And he said, like Luke says, he like looks at Hal and he says it looks like he like wants to like back out of doing this, but decides that he can't because he feels bad about like two kids, you know, like hiding in this bathroom, like being brave enough to do it when he's like not brave enough to do it when he's a lot older. And I was like, or maybe he's just worried about you guys
Yeah.
because you're quite literally children because you're 14 and you're 12 and
14 and 12, yeah.
you're 14 and 12 and you're talking about using Greek fire in order to get away out of this place. Like you could die. He doesn't want you guys to die. You guys are being like nice to him. And there's also the whole part where he's talking, he gets all excited, being like, "Oh, you guys are like my prophecy. Like my prophecy said that people the right person for like the treasure would come and that they would be like the way that I would like get out of this place, that I like my curse or whatever would be broken." And so he gets all excited thinking like, "Oh, maybe you guys are finally here. Like maybe this is finally going to end." And Luke is like, "No, we're not. It's not anything. It's just a bracelet." And he's just like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And either way, I'm like, I'm pretty sure he just is concerned about two middle schoolers like being here by themselves and being willing to make Greek fire knowing that they might die as a part of it because you're literally children. Instead of it being like, maybe he just wants to get out of doing this. But that's just what he thinks. And so Hal gives him, this is like the most important thing I think of this whole thing, is that Hal gives him his diary thing that Hal has. And basically Hal's been keeping this diary where he wrote down all of the like prophecy things and things like that that he did see every single day. He would like write in that journal, and he didn't look at their like future or anyone's future for a long time because this is how he got caught like stuck in this situation in the first place. But he just like started writing down the things that he saw and did and like why these things matter or why he saw them, as a way to like remind himself of like, yeah, it is not a good idea to mess with people's futures. Like, it's not a good idea to tell them like really important facts about their life because they might never make the same decisions because I told them these things. And so he starts writing this stuff down so that he doesn't like forget about the things that he's realized, and so that other people will like find it one day and maybe like will understand, like, so that all these things he's been through will like mean something because they'll help somebody else.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. And he's like, "Oh, Luke, like you need to take my journal," because before this, I
The
think,
prophecies.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hal does this whole thing where he looks at Thalia and Luke's futures. And the thing he says to like Thalia is like, you'll like change form, like you'll die basically and come back to life and like change form twice before you'll find like, you know, a real family. By the end of it, you'll have like a true family. And there is a part of this whole thing where they're talking about family and stuff like that, but they're like specifying like, we don't mean like your biological family. We mean like another family. And that's like the stuff that makes me think that Thalia does know that camp exists,
Yeah.
and that she's just not, for whatever reason, she's not mentioning it to Luke, maybe because I don't know. We don't really know, like Charlie in the interview, he mentioned that that he said that him and Thalia would talk about how they don't like camp and what it represents. That to me, honestly, when it comes from someone like Thalia, it feels like she knows that when she shows up there, she's going to be like the head bitch in charge, and she just doesn't want to deal with it. And so she's like, I don't want to go because I don't want to be my dad's toy, and I don't want to be like doing this thing that will make my dad look good. And it's like, I think you just are afraid that you're going to let people down somehow, because you know that when you show up there, everyone's going to look to you as a leader because you're a Zeus child.
Yeah.
And that's just like what happens with Zeus children. And instead of just coming up with a reason that sounds good to not like camp, that isn't just like, I'm scared of letting people down. But either way, like, we don't really know, like, necessarily. I'm guessing that's why she doesn't want to go to camp, but because she's scared, obviously, because it's also like, what the fuck does that mean? Like changing
Yeah, she
changing
figures
form
she'll
twice.
change forms twice. Yeah, so
Yeah, and
they're
like,
talking about the tree and then when she becomes a hunter.
yeah, and so like we know that she ends
Hmm.
up okay overall, like that she does find like a family for herself, and where she doesn't have to like change who she is, and she can be her own person and doesn't have to do anything with Zeus when she doesn't want to, which is never. And all that kind of stuff. We know that. And then Hal goes to like tell Luke his fate, and you can just, it just reminds me of like when people say things to me and they like trigger me, but I don't want them to know that I am, that like my eyes will just like do that, where he's just like doing
Yeah.
that, like it sounds like that's what Hal's doing, like of what he just saw, and he's like, how do I how do I explain any of what I just saw? And he just says, I just saw fire.
Yeah.
And they're like the fire, like the Greek fire, and he's like, yeah, sure, basically,
Yep.
because he doesn't want to tell him what he actually saw, and just tells him like your actions will change the fate of the world, which like yes, they definitely do. And this is like one of those things that people sometimes quote in like a positive way about Luke, of
Mhm.
like, oh, his actions changed the world. And I was like, yeah, his actions changed the world by traumatizing an entire generation of people, like
Mhm.
multiple generations of people, even. Like people are dead because of him. That's
Yeah.
not that's not like a positive thing. And way more people die in the next book because of him. It's 100% because of him. There's nobody else. It's him. That's not a good thing. Like he's not the one that makes anything good happen from any of this. He just creates a lot of death and violence and destruction. Literally everyone else like finds something, positive to come out of this situation by like the skin of their teeth, basically. But it's not necessarily him. But he does change the fate of the world. He does cause like this huge war that everyone's been afraid of since at least the end of World War II, much less probably like thousands of years before that. People have been afraid of this war happening, and because of the actions he takes, the war like happens.
Yeah.
It actually like happens. Like the prophecy isn't like just this ominous threat anymore. It's like it happens. It comes true on Percy's birthday because of his actions. And so I'm like, I think that's interesting that people say that as like a good thing, of like, oh, he changed the fate of the world. I'm like,
In what way?
like that's not a good thing. And then because of the actions that he chooses to take that change the fate of the world, that could be a good thing, just not when it's him that's doing it. Um, and then the other thing he talks about is just, I don't even remember exactly what he says to Luke, but it's just basically he tries, that's when he gives him his diary, and he's like
Mhm.
trying to tell him like, do not look into like your future, like don't look into your fate. It's a bad idea to know what your fate is. It always messes with your head. They were right. I never should have told that girl about that and changed like the course of her life in that sort of way, because you just never know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
How people could respond to that, just how that stuff like gets in your head, of like, because I always I think about, because I've changed so much in my life, like the me from like 2018 or whatever, it feels like a completely different person. Like I see pictures of me from then, or I like watch videos, not often, but every once in a while I do, and I like read things that I said then, and I'm like, that sounds like a completely different person.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't feel like anything like me anymore. And so like if me in like 2017 or 2018 or something, if I came up to my like self then and was like, "Oh, hey there," and told them like everything that happens in the
Mhm.
next however many years, it would have scared the shit out of me. And I never would have done any of the things that I did, because if I knew how hard it was going to be, even if I knew I got through it all, knowing how hard it was going to be would be really hard. And it's just one of those things of, if somebody tells you, oh, you're going to do this thing, even if it's something that you don't want to, even if it's something you want to do, it just makes
Mhm.
you second guess every single thing you do and say, in a way that like does influence your decisions, because it's just in the back of your mind of like,
Yeah.
what if I'm ruining things? What if this is good? What if this is bad? And it's just overall, especially with this sort of story, knowing like your fate in this way is just never a good idea. And especially for somebody like Luke, if he was going to change the course of his life, and like where it was going to go, letting go with the idea of like his fate and him being somebody like special or important or something, and instead just like focusing on just like being himself and stuff would be a good idea, because that's like the source of most of the things that he does, is wanting that kind of thing, of wanting to be known and remembered and things like, and feeling like he's not, and wanting to get revenge over that. And so Hal trying to tell him like, let that stuff go, it's not a good idea, just stick with like your family that you have now, stay with it, and like read my diary, like read all the mistakes that I made so that you don't do the same thing all over again.
Yeah, and he
And
also said writing down his thoughts, if he had done it earlier, he wouldn't have made a lot of the mistakes.
yeah, and so like write down what you're thinking about so that you reread them again and realize that this isn't a good decision. And Luke takes the diary and he thinks about how like, when I go after that, when the gods show up and they come in my life, I'm going to fight against them, because he's like taking the story of like Hal, and the thing he's taking out of it is like, oh, the thing that was wrong about this situation with Hal is that he ended up in this situation and didn't like try to fight against the gods when they like trapped him in this house forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the thing that you're taking out of this story, that you need to fight against that you need to fight against the gods. That's like the thing that you get out of this situation with Hal. Out of everything that, like, Hal is literally telling you verbatim what he wants you to take out of his life, of like, don't try to change things too much, don't overthink things, just do what feels right in the moment, and like trust that you'll figure it out, that kind of thing. And instead he's like, oh, Hal ended up like this because he didn't fight against the gods,
Yeah.
and so I'm just gonna fight against them now. And it's like, that's not what he's trying to say to you. It's like he's trying to say like the opposite thing to you. He's trying to tell you to like let go of the idea of control in your life. Like, you can't control the gods. You can't like necessarily completely control your fate. If you try to control that stuff, is how, you end up abusive, when you don't let go of control of things. That's like
Yeah.
why he ends up in that place. And it's just like, oh my God. I was like reading it and I like stopped at this point like, it's kind of fascinating how he learned the completely wrong lesson in this situation, because he was already having fantasies about fighting the gods. And like, that's like one point I did want to make, that our friend Sophia, she messaged me out of nowhere a couple weeks ago, and she was reading this for a fan fiction that she's writing. And she was like, I fucking knew that I remembered in this story that Luke talks about wanting to fight the gods before Kronos was ever around. And she's like, I feel so vindicated. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, because he did. Like, he's literally saying it right now. He's already like almost like fantasizing or something about the idea of fighting the
Yeah,
gods.
practically everything that like he thinks in the back of his head as this whole situation is playing out is just like, it's the god's fault all of this is happening.
Yeah. And he's always thinking about them in some way of like, oh, I need to get back at them. And they're like why everything is wrong and bad and terrible. And the thing that's always frustrating with Luke is that like, yeah, I mean, they are the gods and they are abusive, and obviously this whole situation with Hal, if they do it on the show, which I hope they do, that is just like an atrocious story that Apollo like did that to his child to teach him a lesson. Like, what
Yeah.
the hell? There are many better ways to like learn that sort of lesson than that sort of like torture chamber, basically, of being like kept there captive for all that time.
Hmm.
But it also is just a thing of I don't know, it's just they are bad, but it's also a thing of you're not like having this fantasy or idea of like, oh, well, the only way to stop them is to like fight them. It's like, you're not in an action movie.
Yeah.
And that's just overall just never the best idea. Like anyone anywhere in the history of life, like who's ever dealt with somebody who's abusive, knows that the absolute like worst thing to do some of the time, most of the time, is to like actively fight them. Like, yeah, it's fun to fight them. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it's not. Like when I was like 12-ish, I started like fighting, like literally like fighting my dad, like fighting him. Like
Hmm.
how like sidebar to think like how pathetic of a person my dad was that he was fighting his 12-year-old child
Yeah.
so that he could abuse me some more. But he was literally like fight. I was literally like fighting him because I was so like sick of everything that had been going on for so long that I just wasn't. I didn't care anymore. Like I didn't care about
Hmm.
like I wasn't trying to like placate him or trying to like figure out how to make him happy. Instead, I was just like I will do anything to get you to leave me alone. And so I was literally like trying to fight him sometimes. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I was like desperate. And that was like me very very desperate. And that's why I was doing that cuz I had no other option. But like for all the
Hmm.
years after that, like for like the 15 whatever years longer than that, whatever, that he was alive after that, I didn't try to fight him after that. I
Yeah.
wasn't like trying to like yeah, did I fantasize about punching him in the head like all the time? But I didn't actually do it because I knew that if I did, it would make everything 70 billion times worse.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I do remember thinking a lot of times things like that, especially when I was in high school, of like I could like push him down the stairs right now, but then if I did that, then the police would be here and they would be asking us questions, and my mom, my sister would be really upset, and I would be upset, and it would be stupid. I would get in trouble for something. So what if I don't do that? And because it's just not worth it. But it was like even just that kind of stuff of like it's never worth it to a lot of the times, even if it you want to, it's just not worth it to do that because it makes you and everyone else around you in a more dangerous situation.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care about that. He's like, I'm mad at my dad because everything that's happened in his life he blames Hermes for, and so he's just mad at him and wants to get back at him and isn't thinking
Yeah.
about like any other option or how it would affect other people. Um, and anyway, the end of like the Hal story is they do the Greek fire thing. Hal does sacrifice himself so that they can get out, and it does work. They
Yeah,
do get
Luke
out, and
eventually remembers Amalthea is was skinned to be like used in the making of the Aegis, and
mm-hmm,
so he like he tells Thalia like try saying a code word, and so she says Aegis, taps it, and it suddenly has a shield that looks like Zeus and Athena's Aegis,
mm-hmm,
which they I believe there's two Lucrati and one was nearer to Hal and totally got destroyed in the Greek fire. The other one got away with some injuries, and that's the one that they end up saving themselves with Aegis right before it gets them.
mm-hmm. And then right after that is when they end up finding Annabeth. She's
Yes.
like seven, tiny
She's,
little,
yeah, hiding in the bushes with a hammer.
yeah, and is just like afraid of monsters. And she tells, and they are telling her like we're like you, you're safe. We'll help you stay safe and everything. And oh, they Hal gives him like his dagger,
Hmm.
and it's like this special dagger that Hal has, and he tells him that it's like daggers are one of those things that you can like surprise people with it and they can't see it, so it is one of those like strategic sort of weapons.
Hmm.
And Luke gives like Annabeth's dagger to her, which is something that I've seen approximately 7,000 fan arts for, um,
Yeah.
of that. But
It's
either
sort
way,
of a cute moment. Like, you know, it's going to be a cute moment. This is probably what they casted Leah's cousin Marissa
hmm
for.
hmm
I couldn't find a picture of her, by the way. I tried looking to see what approximate age they're going to try to make Annabeth because the Entertainment Weekly, I don't know if anyone else caught this, but they call her a toddler, and she's
yeah.
supposed to be 7 when they find her.
I think that
Yeah,
that was just the Entertainment Weekly person trying to point out that she's really
she's a
young.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
because it is really sad that like
yeah.
Annabeth is like, please don't take me back to my parents. Like she's literally just like begging, like, you don't mean you're not gonna take me back home, right? And I was just like,
Yeah. Well, and okay, so the way that Luke frames this in his mind is also interesting because although he didn't seem too nice to Hal, he sees that whole situation as, well, I lost a demigod, and this right here, us getting led to Annabeth, is my chance at redemption for that, at saving another demigod. And so that's when he makes the promise and he gives her the dagger, which also to me was partially interesting because we also know he does not have a divine weapon at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically gave the only other divine weapon to a 7-year old.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I get it. It's kind of a cute moment. I get why the fandom likes it.
I think
Um,
it's one of those interesting
yeah,
moments for me of it's interesting that the way he looks at it is like, oh well, Hal died, but we got like this 7-year-old traumatized child, so it somehow like balances out. And
yeah,
it's like life doesn't like work that way where
yeah,
things like that don't just happen, but it also is just the thing that always confuses me about this scene with how the fandom overall talks about it is he's saying like I'll make sure that nothing bad ever happens to you and I'll make sure that nobody ever hurts you. You know that it's not true. And
yeah,
that's like the thing about this scene of how much people quote it and talk
yeah,
about it, and they talk about it as if like, oh, Luke said that they were always going to be family, and I was like, Luke during this part of his life is 14. When Annabeth is 14, he is holding her captive, torturing her.
hmm,
Like he is the one hurting her by the time that she is 14. Like that is like the point of this whole part is like you're supposed to feel like the ominous like dread of it knowing that he fails. And so
yeah,
like when people talk about like oh like family, Luke, you always said we would be family, or you always said you would protect me, like that is like Annabeth manipulating him back
hmm,
and getting him to like finally do the right thing, that kind of thing. That is good for her to bring up as a way to try to like use anything at her disposal to try to get him to do the right thing for once. But
hmm,
like you have to like let all of that stuff go of this scene when you actually think about what happens to him going forward. It's one of those things of like, yeah, it was nice of him to say that in that scene, but not even exaggerating, like a couple weeks after this happens, he already fails with that.
yeah,
Like she at 7 years old has to save them from a cyclops. She is terrified by that, and then she has to watch right after that Thalia die.
hmm,
And so like he doesn't keep her safe. He doesn't protect her.
yeah,
He doesn't do that. And so it's supposed to be like this sad thing of at a certain point he was somebody who was at least trying, but within like a couple months of that, that's gone like completely out the window. And like maybe people don't know about that still for a couple years, but still it does happen like that, and it's supposed to like be sad.
hmm,
It's supposed to be sad. Like you're supposed to be sad that at a certain point he wanted to believe that he could be like the dad of this family, that he
hmm,
could take care of Thalia and he could take care of Annabeth and he could
yeah,
keep them safe. And there are times when he could keep them safe, but he chooses his own like selfish stuff over their safety. And it's just one of those frustrating things of like he had like the potential. This is showing that he had the potential, but you also understand that how he like ended up throwing that to the side because there is enough like insight into how he thinks about things where you can clearly see like how he made the decisions that he did like later on, because he is already imagining like fighting the gods and he's only 14. He doesn't know anything like chrono stuff hasn't doesn't happen for like years in the future at this point. He's already thinking about that. And so Kronos didn't have to try too hard, probably, to
probably,
convince him to fight the gods when him at 14 is already like imagining fighting the gods when there isn't
hmm,
even a god around fighting him right now. But like now that we got to the end of the story, like right after this, they mentioned going to like their hideout spot. And then he mentions how the hideout spot isn't that far from where his mom's place was. And he
yeah,
says like I'm not going to feel bad for leaving her there, like I had to go, and that is true. Like him as like a kid staying with somebody like severely like mentally ill isn't a good choice. If he didn't have family or somebody like that to stay with, him leaving was like the right choice. He shouldn't stay there just to take care of his mom. He can't really do that when he is also a kid.
yeah,
But overall, like bringing up the fact of like, oh, let's go to like maybe we can stop by like my mom's and we can see how she's doing, because just like an overall synopsis of that, when they show up at his mom's, is they see his mom. It goes really badly. Like Annabeth talks about it in Sea of Monsters when she's talking to Percy about the whole Cyclops stuff. She talks about, and even on the TV show, they have the scene when they're in Las Vegas and they're talking to Hermes. Like Annabeth says, like Hermes will do whatever we say when I tell him that we're friends of Luke's because of how bad he feels about how much Luke hates him and how bad their like one interaction they had was, or this one time that they had this horrible interaction was. They have other times where they interact before after that, but still,
Yeah.
he go like they have a like they show up at his mom's and his mom is still, mentally ill. Like that doesn't just like get better just if you're not around for a couple years, and
Yeah.
and so he's upset and all that about that and doesn't know how to handle that, I'm sure, since he's 14. Like you can understand that, but still like he gets mad at her. They go to leave and that's when like when Hermes is there, and that's also when Zoe shows up and tells Thalia like you need to leave him behind.
Yeah.
Like he's not good for you. You should join us because going down a path with him isn't going to be a good idea.
I
And
wonder
that's
what would have happened to Annabeth if she had said yes, though, because Annabeth is presumably like 7, maybe 8. And so,
the way I would imagine is like Zoe is Zoe. She's not just going to like leave Annabeth to rot. And
yeah.
so and or like keep her in an unsafe situation. And so the way I imagine that anyway is that they would have made, because the whole process of them making them like a hunter doesn't take a long time. Like Bianca becomes one in like 3 minutes
Yeah.
while Percy's having a mental collapse, yelling, trying to stop it. And so it happens like very quickly. And so I can imagine like her, if she did decide to leave Luke. Oh, one of the things with Hal that I thought was interesting was Hal said something about how Luke was going to betray. He said like you will be betrayed, but you will also betray somebody and there will be a sacrifice. And Thalia says something like Luke would never like hurt anyone or Luke would never betray anyone. And
Yeah.
it did feel like in that moment that she didn't even completely believe that when she
Yeah.
said it. She just like wanted it to be true. But during the whole thing, I just imagined that like Zoe would make her a hunter where she wouldn't
I know, but
she
that little, like that feels like extremely young for a hunter. I feel like
she's
maybe they
12.
haven't made.
Bianca's 12.
Bianca's 12, but
Most
I
of the
mean by the
hunters
time
are
that they run into, well, okay, so Annabeth would be 7 at this time. So that's what I mean. Is like would they want
Oh,
to make
I don't think
Annabeth a
she
hunter
would.
too?
I don't think she would make Annabeth a hunter. I think that what they would do is they would make Thalia a hunter, and then like they would help Annabeth safely get to camp, so
Okay.
that she would be like safe because the hunt. I yeah. Um, so I don't think they would make like someone that tiny a hunter, but I think that they would. It's one of those things. I think they would make Thalia the hunter, and then like help her get there safely. And Thalia probably wouldn't die the same way because even though they can die in battle, like being immortal is a totally different thing. And if
Yeah.
Zoe was there, she would like just kick everybody's asses, and that and that would be like the end of it. And
Yeah.
so Zoe being there would like definitely make that whole situation better. It wouldn't have been like the situation that it was of like the fact that Thalia felt like she needed to sacrifice herself
Hmm.
to save everybody. It probably wouldn't have come to like that desperate sort of a situation if they had another actual adult like Zoe there to like help them, who knows more about battle and things like that than like for thousands of years than they did. And so that's
Hmm.
like how I would imagine that. But like that's always one of those things to, while they're talking about fate, is that like they all made choices to end up in the places that they did. She had that prophecy about her changing twice. And so
Hmm.
it's one of those things of I don't think at that point in her life that they would have been able to do that. And oh yeah, Sophia's bringing up the fact that part of the whole reason why the end ended like so psychotically is that Luke was starting fights with like everything because he was just
Hmm.
mad, and that was the way that he was dealing with it, which caused all of that chaos in the first place. If Zoe
Yeah.
was there, she would like kick him right in the head and be like, stop. She would not have let him go on like this very selfish like man driven, man pain rampage in the way that he
Yeah.
was. And so, yeah, so there is that too. But either way, like, I don't think she was ready to leave Luke behind in that way yet. Like she says later on that she wished she would have, but I don't think 12-ish-year-old Thalia was like quite ready to like give up on him in that way yet. Um,
Yeah, their little found family thing. It's like interesting to hear Luke call himself the dad of their family. Like he
yeah.
actually uses those words and talks about how he's actively going to be a better dad than Zeus and Hermes because, that's him and Thalia's dads. So,
Hmm.
it's just like kind of an interesting insight into his head to read
Yeah.
all of that.
And I guess like the part I was going to say was after this is when he goes to his mom's. He gets upset at his
Hmm.
mom. He goes and meets Hermes. Hermes talks to him and he keeps asking Hermes about his fate. Like, tell me about my fate. What is it about my fate? Because of what Hal said, and doesn't listen to a single thing Hal ever said to him, and or anything that's written in that diary that Hal gave him. And it keeps asking Hermes about his fate. Hermes won't tell him. He tells him
Yeah.
that he knows what it is, but he won't tell him what it is. And that is what makes him so angry, is that Hermes won't tell him what his fate is. He just thinks that Hermes should tell him, like, you've never been around, you owe me, so tell me this thing about myself. And it's obviously it's not a good idea. Everything in Luke's life is telling him that it wouldn't be a good idea to know this, but he just wants to know it. And so that's what makes him go off in like a rage after that and just start fights with literally everything in the planet of what they run into, because he's so mad that Hermes won't tell him what his fate is, and that he knows that it's something. He's pretty sure that it's something bad. And it's one of those things that I think about is that, like, I was always afraid since I was a kid that I was bad because my dad is bad.
Yeah.
And it's like a thing that I can never completely, like, totally let go of because it's like he's half of my DNA. It's hard to, like, let go of that when you have a really abusive parent, of like, you literally brought me into this world and you're half of what makes me, like, at least biologically myself. And so it's hard to not think like I remember many times saying to like many different therapists over the years that I wish that he was like my stepdad instead of my dad. Like I used to like fantasize that I was actually adopted because I didn't want to be related to him. And
Hmm.
I wanted so bad not to be related to him, because even that would still be really hard, but at least then I wouldn't feel like he was like a part of like my body somehow, and that
Yeah.
there was something in me that would suddenly turn me into a bad person no matter what I did and what I said, because he was like that. So how could I not end up like that? And like that's a whole thing in therapy to like realize that there's a lot of choices that you can make, and you can choose not to be like that person. But I can understand that. That's why his whole thing has always been so confusing to me, because I was always afraid that I was going to end up bad because he is so bad. My dad is so bad. And so I did like the reverse. I was always so afraid that I was doing something wrong or that I was hurting everybody because I was afraid that I was going to be a bad person, to like the point that I like let people walk all over me all the time because I and had like tons of empathy for everyone else but me, because I so much didn't want to be a bad person. And that is actually how most abused kids react. That's mostly how we react, is that we realize like I don't want to, I am so afraid of becoming my abusive person in my life, especially when it's like a family member of yours, that you do so much to try to not, you're so afraid of being that person that you end up the polar opposite of them and you don't even realize it for a long time because you're so hard on yourself, because you're so afraid, but you're also, you become like the most like caring, empathetic person a lot of the time because you're so afraid, you want to be so different from that person.
Hmm.
It's not common to be like, I'm afraid of being evil, so I'm just going to become like super bad.
Yeah.
And like for that to like lead to you just like becoming even worse out of the anger of not wanting to, be honest about that stuff. That's part of why his whole thing is like, why? Like, I literally was in this sort of situation. I cannot fathom like being in that situation of hating your dad that much and being so angry at them, and then like using that as a reason to hurt other people. It's just so opposite of everything that I've ever felt since I was a kid, that I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine feeling like that and then actually doing those things and not like ever like snapping out of it. Like I convince myself that I've done things that hurt people that are literally made out of nothing. I've not actually done
Yeah.
anything. But I like convinced myself that most of the time that like the friends and stuff I had through the years would be better off without me. And I generally had no idea why anybody ever wanted to be around me. And that's still hard for me to figure out, although it's a lot easier now than it's ever been before. But I used to just like let people just like disappear from my life because I was like, I ruin people's lives. I make their lives worse. They would be happier without me. And so, like, the whole idea of him being like, these people would be happier without me, so I'm going to make sure to kill them all. It's just like, what? But
Yeah.
either way, I thought that was really interesting that people read that story and they come out of it feeling like the polar opposite of how we felt. And I always
Yeah.
want to like find like the Luke Apologist podcast and be like, what do you guys think happens in this story?
Yeah, because all I really see is like even in trying to show empathy to Hal, he can't get past his anger.
No.
And like that's really his defining thing is his anger. He doesn't ever really let it go in any
It's
situation.
yeah, and it's like he looks at someone like Hal and like can't empathize, like put himself in his shoes, and instead is just like mad at him and saying like mean comments to him because of how the things that Hal has gone through is making his life harder. And it's
Hmm.
just like a thing of like he can't do that. Like he can't think about how somebody else might feel. And because Hal's in a really terrible situation. And
Yeah.
he just even in that situation he just can't he physically like he just like can't do it. Like that was a time where he could have done it, but he just like can't do it. And it's just it makes sense to me at the end of the story why he thinks like Annabeth is the best because she's literally like worshiping him and thinks that he's like the most amazing beautiful person that's going to like save her from being like on the run and starving because she doesn't have any food and doesn't have any help. And so yeah, like
Yeah.
being like the hero to like a little kid is going to make you feel really fucking great about yourself
Yeah.
because little kids when they love you, they just do that. Like I saw my niece this past weekend and she hugged me like 47 times. And just like she would just come up to me and put her hands up and then I would pick her up and she would just there was a point when we were walking around the zoo where she was like falling asleep. I was like holding her and she just like put her head down on my shoulder and was like falling asleep as I was just walking around the zoo with her.
Yep.
and and she would just do that kind of thing. She would just like hug me or she would just look at me and be like, "Shannon," and then hug me. And so yeah, that does make you feel like the best person on the planet, like seeing how much they just like love you with like no conditions or anything. But
Hmm.
also like that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like I'm her hero. Look how
Yeah.
cool I am. Okay.
Exactly.
And then to move on to some of the other stories, the one I wanted to talk about first was Percy and the Stolen Chariot story.
Yeah, so this one was great, and we've been talking about how we love Clarice on this channel. Like, we think she's a great character, and
Mm-hmm.
getting more into her psychology is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
This one is her getting bullied by her half brothers, and Percy stepping in because she just happens to end up outside of his high school at one
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah, like I like that. Like Percy, this is I looked this up just to make sure of
Hmm.
when all these short stories are kind of like set in the overall timeline. And so
Hmm.
this one is set before Battle of the Labyrinth. It said when I looked it up on like the fandom Wikipedia, it said that Rick posted this one on his blog, like
Hmm.
back in like 2007, 2008, probably before Battle of the Labyrinth came out in 2008. And either way, like I really like this because it's very, I like how it's random that she just
Hmm.
happens to be in front of Percy's school. And so he runs out of there and he's like, can I help you now? Like, now that
Yeah.
you like need help, can I like assist in this situation? And she kind of like begrudgingly like tells him what's going on. But of course, this whole story is just like a abused child trauma story.
Yeah.
And so I really liked it because her half siblings are they're like what are they again? Fear and
Panic
phobia.
or wait, it's panic. I always want to say Panic and Pain because that's Disney. But it is Phobos and Deimos, and so it's fear, panic, or terror, dread.
Hmm.
And like it's hard to because Percy even asks at one point, "What is the difference between those?" And she's like, "Well, Phobos is a little more personal, and he's really proud of the fact that phobias are named after him."
Hmm.
And he seems to have this power where he can look into people and like make them see their greatest fear. Whereas Deimos, I mean, we catch him riding a sea serpent at one point, but he's terrifying an entire ship in the process. So
Hmm.
the idea being he more controls, like the terror, dread of a crowd in the fray of battle.
Oh, and yeah, Sophia's asking that's what pain and panic are based on. And it's like, yeah, that's
Kind
where
of,
like,
I think so.
yeah, like phobos, that's where like phobias come from. And phobias are so, like, you're so scared of them, but they're very irrational. And that is like kind of his kind of fear. And then Demos is just kind of more a different sort of fear, more like, I guess, like rooted in reality sort of fear instead of like an irrational fear. Like, why do I have a phobia of bridges? I don't know. They're absolutely terrifying to me. My sister and I both have an irrational fear of those things, and so we just literally panic if we're both on a bridge and there's nobody else there. We both just panic because neither one of us can stay calm. Like the last time we went over a really big bridge, we started singing Kumbaya in the car because it was the only way that we could calm both of ourselves down. Because usually one of us can stay calm when the other one is. No, both of us were just panicking at the same time. Oh my god! Like we will. There's this huge bridge if you drive through Chicago, and you keep going to get to like Ohio or Michigan or whatever. We will drive like an hour out of our way to not go on that bridge because,
Yeah.
because we hate it so much. But anyway, so this story is basically, misogyny that
Yeah.
Clarice is talking about how I guessed in this story that she's 15, so I think she's like a
Yes.
year or so or something older than Percy, but she was talking about how most of the time when Aries kids are 15, they get to ride in his fancy chariot, but
Hmm.
she's the first one that's been offered to do it, that is a girl. And so these two little pricks are going after her purely for the fact that she's a girl, which I like greatly identify with the whole idea of like I'm not even because she very much feels like a person that's like I'm not even like a girl,
Yeah.
like I'm not like like the stereotype of a girl that you would imagine.
Especially book Clarice.
Yeah, no, not at all. Even like show Clarice, like Dior is like a beautiful looking girl, but she's not like overly feminine as Clarice at all.
True.
She like there are characters like that in Percy Jackson, like Selena and other characters like that, but she's not like that. Like she's like a warrior. She's a fighter. She
Yeah.
doesn't want to. She like walks around wearing like shorts and like a t-shirt. She doesn't care about that sort of thing at all. Like Dior does,
Hmm.
but like Clarice does not at all. Which is why it's fun like watching her play that role that is similar to her but also completely different at the same time. And but
Yeah.
either way, like just the whole idea that they're attacking her in the first place just because she's a girl, like God, for the love
Yeah.
of Pete, like Percy's not gonna like that at all. And so they go on a whole thing where Percy's trying to help her. They fight against her
Yeah.
stepbrothers a couple
Because
times.
they chariot jacked her while she was on the chariot.
Yeah, and of course
Um,
they're annoying and keep like disappearing
yeah,
when they're
they hid the
fighting.
chariot. They barely give hints here and there of where it is.
They say something about like wild animals, so I was like, where is his
Yeah,
zoo in New York?
yeah.
Besides like Central Park.
So, couple things. The only thing in mythology I could find of the chariot getting lent out, and this is in the Iliad, is at one point Ares lends it out to Aphrodite. To have her, I can't remember where it comes up in the story. I think she might be saving Aeneas, her son, or
Okay.
something like that. But she ends up having to rush out on the battlefield at one point. The chariot is described as like the horses are more what gets the personality. They don't have this huge description of the chariot, although I do like what Rick does with it, where it has like
Mm-hmm.
scenes of murder on it. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of makes sense for Aries.
Mm-hmm.
The horses are supposed to have golden bridles, though,
Mm.
And the horses all have names. One is actually also named Phobos, and I only saw that in one source. So I'm not sure if somewhere along the line Phobos turned into a horse or what in
Hmm.
mythology. But we have that. We have Konabos, which means like din or noise. Like you think back then when you're fighting sword against shield, it's very, very loud. Um, we have Phlogius, which is flame, and Ithon, which is burning and fiery. So um, those would be the horses. And Clarice mentions the horses know who she is because she
Hmm.
is a child of Aries.
Hmm.
I somewhat like that.
Hmm.
Phobos and Deimos are kind of the people that get the chariot ready for battle in any mythology. That's kind of, they stand next to Ares during battle, and then they help him out with the chariot. There was one myth I found where they're on a ship, and it was Deimos who pilots the ship and Phobos who holds the rudders.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, yeah, the chariot, they mostly get it ready for him. And let's see, the birds that are attacking Clarice in this
Oh,
beginning
yeah.
scene most likely are the Stymphalian birds. It's like
Yeah.
the best answer I could come up with, which they're the same birds that are going to come up in Sea of Monsters in
Hmm.
probably the second episode, I'm guessing,
Hmm.
where during their chariot race they get like attacked by birds. That's why we see the picture of Percy holding up the boombox.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I don't know if that's for sure though. Like we get the description of these are birds that can shoot arrows at them,
Hmm.
but they're not named like monsters in this
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And so I can't remember. I'm pretty sure in the beginning part, I'm pretty sure in the beginning part, one of her siblings makes her see Aries. And
Yes.
before like the end part where they both like see things. Um, and Percy's like yelling at her like he's not real, and like helping her like wake up from it the first time when they fight her brothers like a bunch because they're assholes,
Yeah.
and make her see that sort of thing to try to like win battles that they can't actually win because they're not actually that good at fighting.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
what I laughed at. I actually said that to my brother. So yeah, Percy ends up fighting with Phobos personally, and he's not a good fighter when his power isn't in effect.
yeah,
So
they're so used to just like people being paralyzed by whatever fear they're showing them that they can't fight. That does make it a lot easier to win, but it does make you a little punk when that doesn't work. But either way, they figure out that they're going to like Staten Island, and Percy and her get over there, and they start fighting them like on a giant like sea monster thing before they even get there.
yeah,
And I just like the two of them like teaming up is always fun. Like the thing that Clarice that I'm excited to see them kind of like end up in this place, I think, in the course of season 2 of the show. I
hmm,
saw a post about it today where people said that Clarice and Percy start off as like enemies in season 1 when he thinks that she's the one doing everything. Then they end up kind of like rivals in the course of season 2, and then they end up like friends that are like but also friends that just act like they're not friends for like the fun of
hmm,
it basically, just to like they're like those friends that still like make fun of each other but it's not but they don't actually mean it anymore.
yeah,
And so that's like that, but that's like where they are at this point, and that is like how I remember them by like the end stuff and the even the beginning of Heroes of Olympus and stuff. Is like how they are is that they do care about each other, and will like ask how they're doing and things like that, but not in like the way that anyone else would necessarily. But they still care about each other. And so it's nice seeing this story of the two of them like team up together and be like fighting together on the same side, and like Clarice is having to like show him how scared she is of her dad, and he's like the one person on the planet that won't be like that will be like, yeah, this is a rational fear, and
yeah,
won't like hold that against her or think that she's weak or anything like that, and instead just like yelling things at her to help her get out of it and make her realize that he's not is not really her dad and that she can like fight him. And so that's
hmm,
basically what happens is the part that I thought was interesting
yeah,
for the last Olympian is that there's a part when the one of them is trying to make them feel guilty about people who have died, and Percy doesn't feel guilty about anyone who's died. And the like whichever one of
Oh
it
no, wait,
is.
that's in the last story.
Oh, okay. I forget which one it is. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
But either way, there's something that he tries to make Percy see that he's like not afraid of,
Well,
or
no,
during this part.
he does get spellbound by Phobos, but he gets it broken out of it because they end up in an aquarium.
Oh,
Uh,
we're right. Like, yeah,
yeah.
and the fish in the aquarium are basically like helping him like wake up. Like, it's not real. Like the fish are like yelling, like it's not real. When I
Mhm.
forget what he's. Oh yeah, he shows
He's
him.
seeing camp burning.
Yeah, he shows him at camp is burning to the ground and everyone's being attacked and everyone is like on the ground like begging him to help them and he can't think of what to do. And that would very much be Percy's like greatest fear. My God,
Yeah. He's
would
like, the
be that.
prophecy is here and I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, especially because the prophecy the I've said this before, but that prophecy is especially such a mind fuck because it just tells you like you're going to make a choice and it could be like that could literally be anything. Like that
Yes.
doesn't like narrow down what I could possibly do. My God. And so that's his like greatest fear. And then Clarice's is just and having to see things and like having to see like her dad and her dad of course showing up and like screaming at her and
Hmm.
and Percy helping explain that like he's not really here. Like you're fine. Everything's good now. Please wake up. Your dad is not actually here. We can kick his ass.
Yeah.
And she finally like figures it out. But it's like nice where they like tell each other like what like the thing that they saw was just to almost be like, yeah, isn't trauma fun?
Yeah.
um
But the sweet part of it all was when Percy starts telling Clarice about how he saw Camp on Fire and he saw all of his friends suffering. She like
yeah.
starts asking him the question. He's like, "Yeah, you were there too." Like
Yeah, like you're my
automatically knows
friend. I
that's
consider
what she
you
was
one of my
thinking.
friends. We are
Yeah.
friends.
Well, and what's interesting about Percy's characteristic that we get from this too, from his that being his literal fear, it's kind of almost similar to, I mean, like how people read so much into. Remember in Harry Potter when we see it's Molly's Boggart, and it changes form to like literally everybody in the Weasley family, and then Harry's one of the forms.
Hmm.
And so everybody takes that as a moment of like, oh, he loves, or she really loves Harry as her own. With this one, what I took from it is he says he sees all of the campers, all of them, like
Hmm.
everybody at camp. And so for him, it's not about just like saving his friends, it's about saving everybody. He
Yeah,
doesn't want anybody to get lost in this.
literally
And that's
everybody.
what separates him and Luke is that Luke's kind of like, eh, for cause, I guess some people have to die. Like that
Hmm.
was it Vanessa Hudgens meme that came out like of her with COVID. Some people are gonna have to die. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
that's Luke with his mission. But yeah, Percy is like, no, I want nobody to die, please. And yeah.
Nobody. Like this is before Battle of the Labyrinth. Like the two kids that die that are Dionysus's kids at
Hmm.
the end of Battle of the Labyrinth. Like he doesn't really know them that well, and he rips himself apart because he
Yeah.
doesn't know them that well, and he feels like a failure and a horrible person because those two kids died when the entire camp was in the middle of a shitstorm being attacked by a million things at once and he somehow wasn't able to save them. And then he also thinks he's a horrible person because he didn't know them well enough to
Hmm.
feel like he knew them and was like those kids were just oh one was Dionysus and one was an Apollo kid. I remember that. Oh right, because the Dionysus kids are like twins
Yes.
and so only one of them is that's just one of those things I choose not to think about about how the one that is still alive. But either way, like he's like thinking he's a horrible person because he isn't as sad about the kids that died because he didn't get to actually know them, and he's like, how dare I be at this camp all these years and not get to know every single person here the best possible way. And it's like, oh my God, calm down. Like you
Yeah.
can't possibly know everyone and be in the middle of everything. You're only one person. But that's just how he is, and that's like what people like us are like. We just feel guilty about things that are in no way our fault, but we feel like we're supposed to somehow stop these things from happening. And him being the prophecy kid just makes every single situation of that even worse because there is an actual reason for him to feel like that, not just like his own complex trauma and PTSD.
Hmm.
And so either way, I really like this story to show like Clarice and him bonding over, being afraid of father figures and
Yeah.
him helping her get back and like get the chariot back before her dad would ever find out, especially because of how much he hates Aries. Like doing something to help her not have to deal with that wrath because of her two misogynistic brothers
Yeah.
is always very nice. And it does like because she is around during Battle of the Labyrinth, and he does like feel bad about what's going on with her and just kind of like lets her be. Like you can imagine that this instance already happened, and they have like more of like a, I don't know,
Understanding.
yeah, an understanding like peace between each other of like why
Hmm.
he just tries to like give her space when she's dealing with everything with Chris um
Yeah.
for most of the book. And then okay, the next the middle story
Yeah.
was the bronze dragon one, which is set like during Battle of the Labyrinth basically,
Hmm.
which explains like why there's some sparks of happiness
Yeah.
during some of it because it's before stuff in Battle of the Labyrinth happened. But this story was necessary to read because it has Selena and Charlie in it.
Yeah.
And it's basically them at camp playing Capture the Flag, and Percy and Charlie. I liked the little things that they say, like that him saying that him and Charlie always do like the most dangerous things
Hmm.
because Charlie is like older than him. Charlie's like 18. He's about to graduate high school and go to NYU. And so they're kind of like the more like parents almost of all the
Hmm.
other kids at the school, even at camp, even though some of them are like closer to especially Percy's age. But still,
Yeah.
they're the ones that always go do the most dangerous tasks so nobody else has to do it during Capture the Flag. And it turns into like this whole wild thing where
Yeah, well, first, Annabeth comes up to Percy because they're fighting on the opposite sides, and
mhm,
she tells him to go left, and so he starts thinking, oh, nobody's going to be covering that way. We should go left. And, like, not realizing his wife, or not his wife at this point, but like, that Annabeth, of all people, would exploit a weakness to win a battle. Like, yes, with her friend, she's not going to do it in a serious way, like a Luke way, but in a playful little strategy game, yeah, she's gonna exploit Percy's like perception of her and then realize that he's thinking this. Like, that's the first thing that I thought when she said that, and he's like, oh, so we're gonna do the opposite.
yeah. And it's also one of those things with people like Annabeth of like, did she say that because she wants me to do the opposite, or should I
Hmm.
actually do the opposite, or should I do what she just said because she's trying to? It's like you just have to
Yeah.
go with one and then hope that you're like right about that. And so him and Charlie basically go into the forest. They find this giant like anthill thing
Hmm.
where they're carrying around a big bronze head of a dragon statue thing.
Hmm.
And they kind of give like the general backstory that before Thalia was like the protector tree for the camp, that the way that they kept camp safe was that bronze dragon was something that Hephaestus and his kids made, and Charlie is an Hephaestus kid. And so they had like the dragon was something that defended camp from monsters and stuff, so it wouldn't get in. And but like however long ago it just like disappeared.
Hmm.
And so they see like this giant ant hill of these giant ant things that like gold and things. So they're like
Yeah.
carrying this giant head around. And what are they
Uh-huh.
called? Like, can you?
So Rick calls them something different because what I think they're based off of is Myrmex indicos, which are Indian ants. And once again, it's like a fictional beast that was a game of telephone. So somebody was like, "Hey, did you know in India there's like these giant dog-sized rat or ants that hoard gold and like they have all this gold underground?" I couldn't make sense of so Herodotus is the one that like I found the most information about them on. Herodotus is also the one who gave us the story of like, oh yeah, and there's a thing called a phoenix, and there's a thing called, um, crap, why am I forgetting what Dr. Thorne is now? Manticore.
Hmm.
So, with these, he talks about how, like, Herodotus had this whole thing about how in India, the sun is actually the hottest in the morning, and then in the afternoon, it's like our mornings, and then it gets progressively colder throughout the day. So, the hottest point of the day, the ants are hiding in their ant hill. But the sand that they dig out of the ant hills has the gold. It was really confusing to follow. I was just like, wait, so you strike them when they're in the underground because that feels like that's where they would be hiding the gold. I'm so confused. But yeah, so it's supposedly these ants from India that are that huge. Um and the bronze dragon, Rick came up with this on his own. Obviously, is like loosely based on the fact that there is other automatons in Greek
Hmm.
mythology. But this one is a Rick invention.
And you can like also Hephaestus makes a giant automaton that kills Bianca, so
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
not
well,
too
that one
much.
is in Greek mythology.
Hmm. And so it's
Yeah.
like you can just he would probably make more. And either way, the thing that was interesting in this story was like the weird romantic tension. Like I thought it was funny that like that Charlie is like you should go like talk to Annabeth and blah blah blah, and Percy's like why basically, and
Yeah.
it's just like that seems like a bad idea, like why would I do that, blah blah blah, like how he is about anyone giving him positive affection thinking like you're crazy, and Charlie's giving him all this advice, like womanly advice about like how to
Yeah.
try
Like,
to
go
ask her on a
ask her
date
out.
and stuff, and then Selena walks up and he like loses the ability to speak, and Percy's like, oh, you're so good at giving me advice, but now that the girls around you that you have a big crush on you, like you don't know what to say.
Yep.
And it's just like one of those like funny things of like, oh, it's really easy to give other people advice until you actually have to like follow through with it yourself. And either way, Charlie is just always very nice to him. Is like a nice like old slightly older kid.
Yeah.
And in like the course of the story, he Charlie of course is the one that gets like attacked by the giant ant things.
Yeah, they start pursuing the ants that are dragging this bronze head into the anthill because Charlie is like, wait a second, no, this has to be a sign from my dad. And Percy ends up going along with it because like he's scared for him. He gets overwhelmed by the spiders. He gets like sprayed with acid at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and then like kind of dragged underground. And Annabeth and Selena catch up with them at this point, like
Mm-hmm.
where he's getting taken, and Percy's kind of like, why aren't we doing anything right now? And Annabeth, tells him, well, we're gonna put together the bronze dragon and try to save him that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and especially because at this point, everybody else is playing the capture the flag. They're all scattered across camp. It would be too hard to gather people, and there is too many ants for them to fight them on their own.
Mm-hmm. And so they use like the giant head of the
Yes.
dragon and do get Charlie out. And basically, like the end of the story was them, like you like almost like questioning whether they were just lying the whole time. If they like set
Yeah,
that whole thing up, I really didn't like that.
I
This
don't
is
like it either. I
this
was
is
so
purely like
confused.
my like own like triggers with especially being in like school and also being autistic at the same time. I hate it when people play tricks on me because like autistic people we take things like more literally or like matter of factly, however you want to put that. And so at the end of the story, I had no idea what you were supposed to think because I usually can't tell. And then in this context, I honestly didn't know if you're supposed to believe that Annabeth and her like teamed up like that to make it seem like all these bad things were going to happen just to so they could win capture the flag. And there was a part of me that was like, I do like the idea of of him writing two girls, like being strategic that way, especially two like teenage girls, and especially like Selena, who is like an Aphrodite kid and is could be stereotyped as just being overly emotional and like flighty and
Vain.
a stereotypical like girl and things like that. And so it felt cool to imagine like the scenes where she was like crying and freaking out about Charlie, that was her being over the top on purpose. And I do think you were supposed to think that like at the end of the story. I do like that, but I just hate whenever I feel like somebody's been like tricked. I hate pranks. I hate
Yeah.
all of that stuff because that kind of thing would happen to me all the time when I was in school because people hated me when I was in school. And so those sort of, especially on top of when you're autistic, you can't even tell for sure when people are doing that most of the time, especially when you're like in middle school or younger than that even. And so it reminded me of, I hate that. Like, I know that you're
Yeah.
supposed to just like not take it that seriously, but that's just one of those things. I just hate those things. It reminds me of the kids that would just be mean to me when I was in school all those years. And so I didn't like it. But that's just a very unique subset of why I don't like it. You weren't supposed to take it that seriously.
Yeah, so the way they have us questioning that at the end is that it feels like so much time has passed when they're like putting together the dragon. Annabeth mentions like, oh, we only have 30 minutes until whatever like they do to tenderize the ants do to tenderize whatever they're gonna eat takes effect, and so they're like, in a time rush to get Charlie, but then they go and they fight the ants with the bronze dragon, and then the bronze dragon inevitably like explodes, and so it just feels like it's so much time that there's no way capture the flag is still going on, and then
Hmm.
they get out. Capture the Flag is still going on, and Annabeth and Selena take Charlie and Percy directly to their little like Capture the Flag prison area of like,
Yeah.
we captured you guys.
Yeah. It felt weird. Whatever. I know it was supposed to be just a way to get to know Selena and Charlie a little bit more, which it does
Yeah.
do. And so that's the point of that story, and it succeeded in that. But it would just was I don't like endings like that where I honestly don't know what I'm supposed to think. And Sophia is telling me that that's most people don't are not sure about what you're supposed to think at the end of that story. So it's not just us that was like, did they fake that whole thing just to like win capture the flag? Because that's a little bit unhinged.
Yeah.
I'm a competitive person, but I'm also not so competitive that I like don't care about like the other person at a certain point. Like I'm that kind of person that when I'm competitive and winning a game a lot, I'll like start losing on purpose because I'll like feel bad for the other person losing all the time. Like that's the kind of stuff that I would do. And so I just don't have that like super competitive fire in this sort of way where I could like still take them to like capture the flag jail
Yeah.
after everything that's happened instead of letting them just go like chill out after that. Um, okay, but the last story is the Sword of Hades, and this is the story that I heard of before because every once in a
Yeah.
while somebody will ask Becky about it on threads and wish that they could like adapt this one. And after reading it, I was like, I get why people wish that they could adapt this one with the actors because it is one that feels like an episode of like the show, and is one that
Yeah.
like Becky has said that they wish that they could, and they're not really sure if they can or if it would be possible, but they would want to if they could. They're just not sure if they would like let them basically. But
Hmm.
it is just a really good story, and I understand like why people like it so much because I was like, yeah, this is a really good short story. Um,
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting one. So we get a setup of like Percy runs into Thalia in the woods, and they see a golden like deer. It's this, I always forget how to say it, Cerinthian boar?
mhm,
Cerinthian hind, also called the golden hind, but it's sacred to Artemis. Another Heracles reference with that one because he is tasked with capturing it but not harming it.
mhm,
And so that's what seems to be what drove Thalia there. And then all of a sudden Nico shows up too, and the three of them are like, "Oh crap, this isn't good. We're not supposed to just randomly show up at the same place." And
mhm,
especially once Nico arrives last, like that's when it's really like an oh what the hell is going on situation because then it's all the big three kids that are living.
mhm. And so they end up going to like the ground basically just like drops and
Yeah.
they're just like going down to the underworld and they end up in Persephone's garden.
Yes.
Um, and of course, like, Nico's like, don't eat anything.
Hmm.
Um, but, and I like how he's like, she hates me. And they're
Yeah.
like, what, sir? Child? Tiny child? You're 12?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh yeah, my stepmom hates me. And it's like, oh my God, Nico.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that just yet. I don't know if we ever get any actual interactions between them where it's like super clear what that dynamic is like. But I'm
I
sure it's
don't know.
interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
I do know that in like future um, times, I guess is the best way to put that, that like Hades gives him like his own like castle or whatever in the underworld, like Nico's to live in. And I know that there are scenes with Hades and Persephone, I'm pretty sure, in future books that we haven't read yet.
Hmm.
Um, and so there is some stuff there. But
Yeah.
either way, it's the basic like thing of the story is that Persephone shows up and says that Hades was working on making this sword that he's not supposed to be making because he would get in trouble with his brothers if he was making like his own weapon.
Hmm.
But it's this super powerful sword that if whoever like touches it or anything like that, you can like bring people back to life or kill
You
them.
can raise the dead
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And so it's like you could bring anyone back. So if somebody died, you could just keep bringing them back.
Hmm.
And also it like would kill a lot of people like really quickly. And so the overall idea is Persephone brings all of them there because it's missing. And
Hmm.
she shut down like the underworld because they're trying to find who stole it before they can leave with it. Because obviously that's a really dangerous thing. And they want to try to find it before anyone realizes that they even have it, that it even exists,
Hmm.
and that it's also missing, because that would definitely cause
Yeah.
a bit of chaos. And so they have like this plant.
Carnation. Yeah, I
Yeah.
called it the carnation of doom in my notes. So Persephone enchants this carnation so it'll always be pointing towards whoever the thief is. And
Mhm.
then also the closer they get to leaving the underworld, because even though she's sealed it off, like there's still escape points somehow. The closer they get to escaping, the more the petals fall off.
Mhm.
And so they're in like a weird time rush where they have to follow this flower and make sure it doesn't die on them.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny that Percy right away notices, like, okay, A, this is Nico's mission because him and Thalia don't want to do it at first, but it is Nico saying like, I think I have to do this for my dad.
Mhm.
That makes Percy jump on board, and then Thalia does too.
Yeah.
And I think also he recognizes, like, okay, since this is Nico's thing, and since Dahlia doesn't even want to be here, and she doesn't want to be the girl holding the flower, I guess I'll hold the carnation for us.
Yeah. And I did also like that when Thalia meets Nico,
Hmm.
she's he says something about how Hades is when he says Hades is his dad.
Hmm.
She's like, "Oh, are you Bianca's brother?" And
Yeah,
it's like interesting that that's how she knows Nico, just as Bianca's brother, because Bianca's the only one that she actually knew. And anyway,
yeah,
she was never actually around Nico at all. And it was just interesting perspective because she never met him, like
not
in the
really.
stories really before
Yeah.
this point. Um, and so the first like over dramatic person that they run into is Sisyphus.
Sisyphus, yeah. So Sisyphus is known for cheating death. Let's see. So he Zeus took a girl, and Sisyphus told the location of the girl. And so he, as punishment, was taken by actual death, Thanatos, although in some versions it's Hades.
Hmm.
And he realized that he wasn't with Charon, and I feel like this is significant because Charon would know people are going to try to trick him. But Death is told go chain him up in Tartarus. And so while he's about to chain him up, Sisyphus pulls almost like a Percy level trick where he's like, "So how do those chains work?"
Hmm.
And Death like starts showing him, and as he's showing him, he like locks Death up, and he is able to get to escape. Now there is a second version where he tricks Persephone, and Rick explains it like these are two back to back. He cheated Death. So, with Persephone, he had told his wife, like, when I die, don't bury me, throw my body, like, be careless with it. And he used that with Persephone to be like, oh, my wife didn't bury me. And so he's allowed to go up and haunt her. And he just doesn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are the two ways he cheated death. I just love that the first one reminds me of Percy, of just like, hey, how do those chains work? Show me.
Oh, and I did want to say for like Persephone that I liked how Rick kind of had Percy thinking like, oh, Persephone like hates Hades at first because of the way she says she couldn't like go to the like the planet, I guess, and talk to
Yes.
them. So she had to like find a way to for them to bring down to the underworld. And then she's like, I don't hate Hades, like he's my husband, basically. And it's
Hmm.
like I am doing this to to help him. I don't hate him or anything. And I was like, oh, thank you, sir, for immediately like kind of disregarding that whole idea of her being somebody that like feels trapped or whatever by him. I
Yeah.
appreciated that. Um, okay, and then the whole
So
Sisyphus
yeah.
thing is they basically like make a deal with him if he tells them like who talked to him and was trying who was trying to like steal the sword, who had the sword,
Hmm.
and he wouldn't tell them at first, of course, because he's over dramatic and ridiculous. And they basically make a deal with him that the role that Thalia will bring his rock up to the top of the hill once, so he doesn't have to do it if he tells them who it
Hmm.
was. And he tells them, and then immediately tries to like run away from them.
Yeah, and Thalia just lets go. The rock falls towards him.
Yeah, and it's
But
like,
what I thought was funny was Thalia like also got somewhat enchanted while she was doing it for him because
mm-hmm.
she's like, Percy, it was really weird. I didn't want to stop rolling it. Like
Yeah, it's
I wanted to try
the
again.
they like she had like this feeling like if I just do it one more time, I'll be able to get it right. And it's like how he ended up like getting stuck doing that. Every time you would get to the top, you would think that it would finally stay, and then it wouldn't, and then he'd have to, and then he'd do it again and do it again. I
Yeah.
liked that, like showing like a little bit of how there's like some enchantment to like imagine why, because some of these stories you're like, but why would they do that for that
Yeah.
long? Like, wouldn't you just get like fed up and stop? But like them introducing that like bit of how they like enchant them to try to like want to keep going
Hmm.
makes it where you can imagine somebody getting stuck in that for
It's like sunken
ever.
cost fallacy on steroids of
Yeah.
just like, I'm so close, I could get it this time. Same thing
Hmm.
with Tantalus and how he's teased by water and food.
Hmm. And
Um,
so they
yeah.
he tells them that it's somebody with a eye patch, and so Percy's like, oh, it's Ethan.
Hmm.
And I don't think he actually says it out loud or anything because I'm not. Nico knows Ethan, maybe. I think they're
Not
I think they
sure.
maybe see each other a little bit, but not really. Like maybe when Nico runs in with the rest of them to help Percy when Luke turns into Kronos. But I think that's the only time they would ever be in like the same
Oh
place at the
yeah,
same
that makes
time.
sense.
But
Um,
that hasn't happened yet. Did that happen yet? Yeah, that this happened. That
oh
happened
wait,
already. Because it's
one
right before.
more.
This is set before, right before the
Yeah,
last Olympian.
one more funny thing is like really quick. Well, Sisyphus had death chained up. Do you know who got mad and like decided to do something about it? Ares. Ares was like, my battles aren't fun because nobody is dying.
Oh yeah, nobody can die. I can't watch anybody die because I'm such a good fighter.
Yeah, this isn't fun anymore. So he goes and he like makes that whole situation. He rescues Death.
Um, okay, and so he tells them that it's that basically that it was Ethan, and they
Hmm.
realize what cave they think Ethan is trying to get to.
Melione.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she is the goddess of ghosts. And so it says one of the duties she does is she also presides over propitiations offered to ghosts. She trains ghosts, and some people think like she might be later conflated with Hecate or Hecate. I never know how people say that.
I think they say it both ways, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not really a Percy Jackson name unless we both say it a different way and then figure out how Rick wants us to say it later. When he
Yes.
does an interview and he randomly says it a way, then everybody's like, "How did you pronounce that, sir?" Like how he
Yeah.
pronounces Luke's last name. He pronounces like the Spanish way, which makes sense, but nobody else thought of Luke
Castellan
as
or
being
something.
Spanish. Just Yeah, whereas like Jan
Yeah.
instead of Castellan. Like I don't know if I'm ever gonna like say that the right way because it's just like in my head that his last name is Castellan. Sorry, Mr. Rick.
He's
I
a
don't know
white
if I can
boy.
change it now. It's been a long time. Uh, but either way, they realize that they have to go to that cave. So they have to go to like get through the river. What is that called? Lead?
Lethe.
And it's
Lethe, yeah. So this is what, when you go to the illusion fields and you decide to get reincarnated, you drink from this river so that you forget your past memories before you go on to your new life.
I'm having House of Hades war flashbacks. Like anyone anyone who's read that book is having those when you read
But
this
yeah,
story.
before this is when they get attacked by the carries, which are they are they like violent death. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I saw, like the way it was described, is that they tear people's souls out of their bodies when they've had a violent death. And so Percy gets scratched on the shoulder by one. And this shoulder injury comes up both like, so when they get to Lethe, they don't know how to cross because if they cross, if any drop of water touches them, they're
They'll
going
forget
to forget
everything.
things. Yeah. And so Percy, he A has to first fight with that shoulder injury, but then B, he has to figure out how to lift up the river, and it actually hurts his shoulder, even though he's not literally lifting it. He's using his powers. He also passes out a couple times.
Many times. I was gonna say this part is
Yeah,
funny in like the scapegoat way because
yeah,
Percy is just like he just keeps waking up when he passes out and he's like, where are we now? Like he's not even questioning the fact
yeah.
that he keeps passing out. He's
He's
just
just
like,
like, wait, wait, we still have to keep going.
yeah, like where are we? What are we doing? What is the magical plant looking like now? What's going on? What am I supposed to do? Because it's actually like poisoned and hurting him pretty badly. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
if
because they say like one of the things is the carries kind of are also agents of like disease, and so they
yeah, they're
say,
talking about how he's like
yeah,
getting a fever and gonna get in like things are gonna get infected if they don't find a way to heal it soon and all
yeah,
that kind
they
of stuff.
basically are patching him up. They're not able to fully heal this injury on their own.
No. And so he basically this is just such like a scapegoat thing. It just makes me laugh, like remembering things that I've done. Like sometimes this is like a sidebar thing, but I bond with Sky and I sometimes, our friend Sky, we talk about things like this sometimes with our like
Hmm.
obscenely high pain tolerance that I will like go to the doctor sometimes and they'll be like, didn't this thing like hurt a lot? And I'm like, I guess. Like, and they just look at me like I'm lost my mind of him just like waking up from passing out multiple times when he's in all this pain. And he's like, all right, you guys need to get over the river. Let me just like stumble around and kind of fall over and hold the river up for you guys and tell myself that I
Yeah,
can't let any of it touch you because if I do, you're going to forget everything
yeah, but
about who
that
you are.
makes him start passing out, and the river falls on him. But luckily, before it falls on him, he's able to think like, stay dry," and use his power of not getting wet unless he
Yeah,
wants to.
I liked that part that he gets both of them across and then he's trying to get himself across, but he can't hold the water up anymore. And I just like cuz he's just so like tired and like whatever that he just thinks like dry and that's all it takes for him to stay dry. Um and he gets across and they move on to like the next part to try to get to the cave and try to stop Ethan, but I think at this point was when they realized that they didn't weren't able to stop him or something.
They
I
were
can't
like,
remember.
so I think they were down to like two petals like at this point. They were down to like really few petals, and Percy keeps passing out and they keep stopping to try to heal him, which I feel like Percy would be mad at them for if he
Yeah,
really thought about it.
yeah. He probably
Um
would be like, just leave me here, passed
yeah,
out on
but
the ground.
Melione being the goddess of ghosts, this is where it comes up, the scene that you talked about
Mm,
earlier, where she's not able to make Percy feel guilty with any ghosts. So Thalia and Nico both see their mom. Like Thalia first, and we know her mom was an addict. Like she left, and then her mom died, and so she never really got
hmm
to say goodbye. And
hmm
that's where the guilt comes from her. Nico doesn't really remember his mom, right? And
Yeah,
I'm not
like
sure
when
if that's maybe where the guilt comes from.
at the end of Battle of the Labyrinth is when he goes to like try to find out like how they ended up in the casino, what
Yeah.
happened to his mom. Like he was so young that he knew his mom died.
Hmm.
That's like when they like when his mom died is when
Well, the
he when
Lotus makes you forget too,
yeah.
so.
And so like when their mom died is how they kind of ended up in the casino. And so he somewhat remembers his mom, but he doesn't remember like necessarily what happened to her. He just remembers her enough to know that that was his mom and she's not
Mhm.
around anymore. And so they both feel guilty about that, about just like those people dying and being gone and missing them and things like that. And um, that is one interesting part about Percy that definitely changes.
Mhm.
It definitely changes.
Yeah, so he says Melione's not able to get him in the same way because he doesn't have any ghosts that he feels sorry about. And he like goes through his head of like, well, there was Bianca and Lee Fletcher. Wait, no, Lee Fletcher is that Harry Potter? Am I thinking the right name?
No, that's the right name.
Oh,
Um, and it
yeah.
from he died in he was the other kid, the Apollo kid who died
Okay. Yeah,
in
and
Battle Labyrinth. And yeah, but at this point in the story, like Zoe died, but Zoe
so yeah, he thinks
Zoe
about
isn't
it.
like his fault, and he knows that. Like even in Titan's
Yeah.
Curse, he knows that it's not his fault that Zoe died because she got hurt, like trying to protect them with the dragon. There's no way he could have known that that happened. He tried to, he tried to do what he could to try to help her with her horrible dad. And it wasn't really her dad that really killed her anyway. It was more like the thing that she got from Ladon. And so he didn't, it was one of those things of he couldn't have done anything to like save her because he didn't know like what happened. So he didn't like losing her, he was really sad, but he didn't really like really blame himself too much for that one.
Yeah.
And in Battle Labyrinth is when Bianca helps him realize that it wasn't his fault that she died. And so, and like the kids at camp, it's like that's Luke's fault. Like
Yeah.
Bianca dying even, and the kids at camp, that's like Luke's fault. And so he feels like responsible in the moment in the way of like I wish that I could have like stopped this from ever happening, but not to the point where he feels like it's actually his fault that they're not around anymore.
Yeah, he frames it as I made peace with those people. So,
Hmm. And
um
that
it doesn't
definitely
affect him.
changes in the next book.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but at least at this point we know the people who he's lost. It's like he's very reasonable with himself. I feel like Bianca, the only reason he was mad at himself was because of what was going on with Nico, and at this point him and Nico have made up.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he carried guilt like he could have prevented the death. I think it's more just like, oh shit, this is the reason Nico left.
Well, I think I will say in Titan's Curse and some of Battle Labyrinth, he did kind of feel like he could have because she went off to
Yeah,
run
like I
into
could
it
have
when
been the
he
one
was
who
going to
ran
do
in.
it, kind of thing. And she like he couldn't stop her from running off like before she was doing it, and she did like his plan that he told her to do, but except that he was planning on doing it, but she did it instead. So he definitely did feel responsible for her, but her like literally telling him, "It's not your fault that I died." That definitely helps anybody for the literal person to tell you it's not your fault that I died.
Hmm.
And to be able to like especially to have like Nico stop also saying it's your fault that I died. Like in those scenes in the part about the labyrinth before she shows up, like Nico keeps saying like it's Percy's fault that Bianca's gone and he's not questioning that at all. He's thinking like, yeah, it
That
is my
is true.
fault, but I just have to find a way to like keep this kid safe anyway and not let his anger at me like hurt himself basically. But he's not like he's not like thinking that it's not true. He thinks that it is true. And he's like, yeah, Nico should hate me. I just don't want him to get hurt because he hates me. That's like what his like internal voice is like in the beginning of that book before Bianca shows up. And he realizes that Bianca was like showing him what was going on with Nico. That helps a lot when he knows that Bianca was showing him that stuff because she trusted him that he would be able to help Nico. That
Yeah.
definitely helps a lot to like let go of the guilt that she trusts him that much with her brother, considering that would definitely
Yeah.
help. But either way, like he doesn't feel like that anymore, and so she's like, "Well, what the fuck am I gonna do with you now?"
Yeah, and at this point, so they went to this cave because that was the exit point that Ethan was going to use.
Hmm.
And all of the petals fall off. Ethan's there, and Iapetus. And Iapetus is a Titan. He is known mostly for being a dad. He's known for being the dad of Atlas, Prometheus, Epimetheus, and I always don't know how to say his name. It's the same name as Patroclus's dad. I think it's like Minotius or some Menetius, something like that. That person's not as important. Of course, Atlas, Prometheus, and Epimetheus are the ones that have a lot more relevant mythology, at least that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, the Piercer stuff, it doesn't come up as much as you would think. Like, I couldn't find too much on him, being this big part of anything really, except apparently when Kronos usurped Uranus, all of the sons, like all of the male Titans, were helping to hold down Uranus when
Mm-hmm.
Kronos castrated him, and Iapetus grabbed a leg. I'm pretty sure. So he was one of the people binding his father down during that. But really, there's not a lot to his mythology. So I saw like it's almost like Rick was like, "There's not a lot here, so I'm gonna do my own thing."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like. That's what I wish more people would do is like take the stuff that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, like why not? And so they fight him, and he ends up falling into the.
Yes, Percy gets him into Lethe. That's how Percy ends up winning that battle. And immediately, like, he doesn't know who he is. And Percy, thinking on his toes, is like, "Oh, you're Bob." And Ethan's still there. Ethan still is, like, trying to go through with the plan, but he can't really fight it at this point. And he
Mm-hmm.
does try to make for the sword, but um, Thalia like shoots an arrow right at his feet as he's about to like grab for it, and he ends up just running off.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to return the sword. Let's see, is there any other notes that I have on this? Oh, sorry, this is one thing about Iapetus I found interesting. It was someone else's interpretation, at least, of his sons kind of represent the worst parts of human traits. So Prometheus being sly and crafty, think like Odysseus. And Epimetheus, Prometheus means forethought, Epimetheus means afterthought. That's like the way that I remember this.
Mm-hmm.
He is known for being a fool. He's the one that gets given Pandora, and Prometheus had warned him, like, don't accept any gifts from Zeus. And he's like, oh, let me take this gift. And what's this in her hands? A jar? Like, let's open it. And then Atlas is known for being excessively daring, was the way
Yeah.
that they put it. That doesn't necessarily sound like, I don't know, that doesn't sound negative to put it that way. So I'm not even sure how I would say it. Maybe more reckless, but
Yeah.
it's hard to call a general of war reckless when we don't know that much about the war.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Menoetius is supposed to be the violent one. Um, so yeah, him getting his memory washed and just becoming this like nice, cute Bob is kind of an interesting thing to happen with that being a background.
So Bob is actually a really important character,
Mhm.
and not like super important to the plot, but like
I thought I remembered you mentioning him before.
yeah, that in the river and him, it just makes people have war flashbacks to the House of Hades book. And he's in that book, and he does something to help Percy and Annabeth when they're in Tartarus.
Hmm.
And he's in like that form still, but he's helpful to them. And he basically says like I just want to see the stars again one day, and I know that I'm never going to see them because I'm always going to be down here forever, and I just want to see the stars again one day. And like those like those posts that go around of like the saddest Percy Jackson quotes.
Hmm.
Our friend Sky did one the other day, and one of them on there, the quote is Bob says hello. And when I saw it, I just started crying, and I told her like
Oh.
I can't handle I have to read that scene again when we read that book, and it's going to kill me because they get out of Tartarus and they see the sky again, and they're on like a big like ship thing for them, like I told you, because they're fighting Gaia, so they try not to be like on the actual like land as much as they can be. And so they get to like back on the ship after they get out of Tartarus, and Annabeth and Percy are like on the top of like the ship by themselves, and they're looking up like at the sky, and Percy sees the Zoe constellation and mentions that it's Zoe, and like thinks and is like thinking about her, and then he looks up at the stars and he says Bob says hello, and you're like, I want to die right now because it is so sad. And like Percy is so sad during that entire part. Like he is so depressed. He is like, imagine Percy having to leave somebody behind who has like done something nice for him. He
Yeah.
does not know how to handle the idea that like Bob is down there in Tartarus suffering while he somehow got out of there. And he just doesn't know how to handle it. And he's in a very bad like place. But that scene of like Bob says hello just like rips everybody apart. That Percy comes back and that's like the first thing he does is like look up at the sky and say that. And then the Sun and the Star book of Nico and Will's first book that they put out last year, yeah, last year, was them going back to Tartarus to rescue Bob.
Oh.
And they do rescue Bob. And like that is literally the only thing of that book I wanted to know. I'm like, please, for the love of God, tell me that you rescued Bob. And I looked up spoilers enough to know that they actually do get him out of Tartarus. And that's like all I wanted to know. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because that's, but they like go back to like help him get out of Tartarus because they know it's important to like Percy and Annabeth that they had to leave him there. But he is like one of those characters that Bob says hello thing just makes people cry when you've read that book before, because it's so hard that they have to leave him behind, and he ends up being like a really important character for them in that part of the story, and you're like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And so this whole part when he says like, oh, your name is Bob, I was like, oh my God, this is Bob. I love you though. Like this
Yeah.
is Bob. Like I remember like in House of Hades they reference where like Percy just like references where he met him, and I just like didn't think further about it, that I didn't know hadn't read this story before when I read that book like way back in the day when it first came out. Like, let me tell you, like, just as, like, I feel like an olden days person, but genuinely people like me who read Mark of Athena when it came out and then had to wait an entire year to find out what would happen to them in House of Hades. I did not read, like, the last book, the Blood of Olympus book. That's the last book in the Heroes of Olympus series for, like, 4 years after that. Because I knew it was like the ending book, and so I didn't want to like read the end of like Percy and stuff. But also that book is so hard that I was like, I need a break because that was so hard to read them in such a bad place for that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's this story. I was like, this is Bob, but I love Bob. Now I'm gonna cry, just like thinking about him because he is such becomes like this really important character for Percy and Annabeth. That is just like, oh my goodness. And so like Nico saying like I'll watch out for him to make sure that he does stay okay. Like he never goes back to like being, angry or cruel or anything like that. He's the opposite. He's like this super nice Titan that just helps them out, and everyone's confused about why like a super powerful Titan is like best friends with a couple demigod kids.
Yeah.
um but that's why they are. That's like one of those weird like nature versus nurture things or whatever, that he forgets all of his memories and he just is a nice person. And he doesn't like, it's not one of those things like he's never like tempted in a way to like go back to how he was before. He's Bob is just a really nice person.
Yeah.
And so it is one of those things of Rick writing somebody to be like, no, you don't have to like go back to that if you don't want to. And this version of Bob doesn't want to. He likes helping people. And
Yeah.
so he's just gonna do it. And you're like,
Oh.
oh.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to do it with that figurine mythology. Like I said, the fact that we don't know too much is kind of like do what you want with him for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so how this resolves is they bring the sword back and they find out that well, they had been wondering all along, why is it Persephone that's ordering us to do this when this is Hades' sword?
Mm-hmm.
And so Hades seems really angry when they come back with the sword, and Percy kind of deduced like he was really rationally angry for us just helping him out. So,
And he was like,
did he
oh,
even know about this?
yeah,
He
he was
didn't
like,
know
he
about
didn't know
this.
about
This is
this.
your plan, isn't it? And she was
Hmm.
like, I can't have my husband showing up without a weapon. We do know, they said earlier in the story, he fights with a staff along with his Helm of Darkness.
Hmm.
And it's not that you can't fight with a staff, it's just at least in Western fighting, we mostly think of them like sorcerer staffs. Like, you're just using it to be a vessel to launch spells.
Hmm.
But, like, of course, there's martial arts where they use a bow staff, and, like,
Hmm.
you could actually kick some butt with it if you really wanted. But, um, yeah,
I first off like that his version of Persephone does love and care about Hades because there's at least 200 classics that will be mad about just that one sentence that I just
yeah,
said. At least, probably more than that. And then I also just like the fact that it shows like how like the stress of knowing that the prophecy is going to happen soon. Like in this story, Percy's 15,
hmm
and so his birthday is coming up pretty soon, and so all the gods like know that it's going to happen. It's going to
yes,
happen, and so they're like all like stressed out, like trying to think of ways to protect themselves. And so Persephone's like, well, I want my husband to be okay, and so what if I make this crazy magical sword that could keep him safe in case like something goes wrong, or in case like Nico ends up being the prophecy kid or something. Because that is like a thing. There is like
yeah,
a tiny part of that sort of thing in the Last Olympian of Hades even like trying to do stuff like that. And it is one of those things of, yeah, their gods aren't above it, of like the stress of like wanting to win
hmm
and feeling like they need to do something to like try to protect themselves. I just like the idea that she was doing all of this like stuff that could seem like backhanded or underhanded or whatever, but really she was just doing it because she was trying to keep everybody safe and was
yeah.
just like, I don't think my husband's going to do this, so I'm just going to do it so that something bad doesn't happen to him or like where we're or the underworld or whatever. And I was like, I like this. I like
Well,
this like sort
yeah,
of like sneak it around kind of thing because that is what a lot of like the gods and demigods around this kind of general time they're kind of doing. Like there's a part in this story too where Nico like says to Percy like the offer that I gave you is still like open. I generally don't remember what that is. But
a
the
way to help him, like,
yeah, like
fight.
I mean
Yeah,
like what it is. Because
yeah,
like that was like the cliffhanger of at the end about the labyrinth. And so like Percy knows what the offer is. He told Nico no. And we know that he told Nico no, that it just like scares him the idea of doing it. I don't remember what it is. They tell us what it is pretty early on in the Last Olympian, but at this point we don't know what that is. And but still like he's referencing that. And so that's Nico doing the exact same thing of he's trying to find like a way to keep Percy safe now that he realizes that Percy is a nice person and doesn't want to hurt him and stuff.
yeah.
And so he's like trying to like sneak around and have him do something that other people won't think of that Percy's scared of to keep him safe. And so they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so it just is like one of those things like they're all kind of trying to do that kind of stuff. Because how else are you supposed to like cope with impending doom?
Yeah, I do. Can I go on a Persephone rant really quick?
Of
Because,
course.
so on Reddit, I did see another person, and I totally get this. I totally get the idea of the interpretation that, like, maybe the feminist, like, version in the original, like, the feminist way to see the original is that this is a mother and daughter standing up together against a forced marriage that her father's trying to put on her. I do see that, and I do see how if you come from a culture where that is your experience, that you would relate to it in that way.
Hmm.
I was like actually like live texting Shannon one day while I was rereading the second hymn to Demeter, where you get the majority of this story from. And with Persephone and Demeter, there is a point where you lose your empathy for Demeter if you are a good person, and it's in that she is starving people because of this. She's
Mm-hmm.
starving the people that go to her altars, she's starving the people that go to everybody else's altars. It's why all of the other gods get involved. And
Mm-hmm.
then not only that, but she decides that while she's on this little like temper tantrum of not letting anything grow so all the humans die, she decides to take a baby, somebody else's baby, and try to raise it as her own without giving any sort of consent in the situation.
Hmm.
And like those are the places where I lose empathy for her because she's steamrolling over everybody else over her feelings, you know?
Hmm.
Like the grief over having your child abducted is huge, but most people don't go and abduct somebody else's child when that happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, like this goes back to you and I and how we see the gods versus like how other people will forgive them for doing really heinous shit because they're angry or offended or something. Um, you don't get away with killing a bunch of people and then, like stealing a baby, worrying his mom like half to death because the mom walks in on the scene of Demeter putting the baby in the fire. Not explain. She doesn't even explain it when the mom catches her. She's just like, "You ruined everything. Now he's not going to be immortal. I'm gonna go build me a
Yeah.
temple. Bye."
Sophia's
Um,
pointing out that she basically did the same thing she is throwing a temper tantrum over. And it's like, yeah,
yes.
you're upset that somebody stole your daughter, so you're stealing somebody else's child. And that's like the whole thing is like to me when I hear that, I remember telling you this when you were reading that that doesn't feel a feminist to me.
Hmm.
Um it like I it's like it shouldn't be that surprising to me just because people can be weird about like what they think is feminist and what's not. Like women, I mean, white women. We can be like ridiculous about the things that we think are feminist in an annoying way. But
Yeah.
it's just like this is a story that had to be written by men because women weren't allowed to write stories like this. And so you're writing a story, yes, of a mom that is upset about her daughter being forced into like an arranged marriage, but the way that she reacts to it is so over the top and to the point that like she's basically throwing like a temper tantrum. She's literally like running around the world crying, like starving people, stealing babies just to get her child back. Like that to me feels more like an hysterical, like the stereotype of like an hysterical woman that
Yes.
is like, oh, you can't trust women with anything because they're too emotional.
Yeah.
And things like, oh, sorry. Oh, Sophia said that Demeter is in The Last Olympian. I didn't even remember that she's in The Last Olympian.
I
And
figured
so
she would show up somewhere.
so that'll be really interesting to see what, because she said she had issues with her. We probably will go on an entire like long 45-minute rant about that one thing because we probably will have lots of issues with her too. But overall, like I guess that myth idea of it felt more like a man writing what they thought a woman in distress or being distraught or whatever would feel like, and but it came off as like really misogynistic sounding of like, oh, women are so hysterical. Look at how she's like starving people and stealing babies just because she's upset about her daughter. Like it felt like weird propaganda in a reverse way of like being okay with like arranged marriages or something because it's like if she would have just let her daughter like if she let her daughter go with that guy then like she wouldn't have been doing all of this stuff.
Yeah, and I like kind of see it as she begrudgingly gets into this marriage, but she doesn't stay in a begrudging state. Like it kind of eventually turns into like, well, I'm gonna make the best out of this situation. There's a really good show. I don't think it's a good fit for you personally, Shannon, but like it's called Blue-Eyed Samurai and it's on Netflix.
Hmm.
There's a lot of weird sex and violence in it,
Oh, okay.
but one of the things that is like a subplot of it is there's this aristocratic girl who is being put into an arranged marriage with somebody she does not want to marry. And she runs away to a brothel at one point and she becomes kind of like a dominatrix of sorts. She like doesn't give up her virginity, but she's
Hmm.
somehow able to survive at this brothel for a little while. And when she finally reveals who she is to the girls in the brothel and stuff, they're like, "Why don't you go into this marriage and just like take ownership? Like you know how to control a man now. Go
Hmm.
do that in your marriage, girly." That's what I kind of see this as with Persephone because like
Hmm.
she ends up having a dominion. She ends up getting treated as more of an equal ruler than Hera does as a queen of Olympus.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think she makes the most out of the marriage, even if she doesn't go into it as a willing participant.
Hmm. Yeah, and like the whole thing with using myths like hers is like if you've gone through like abuse in your life, you
Hmm.
have to look at those stories in a different way because none of them are written for us with like how they're initially told because people don't
Yes.
think about what that sort of thing is really like when your parents are like that. And so the only way you can really find like solace in those stories is if you make them what you want them to be.
Hmm.
Um, and there's honestly a lot of places with the Demeter Persephone situation to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
And like it's one of the first things my therapist said to me because I started therapy for enmeshment trauma. It's
mhm,
why I see myself in the Persephone myth. It's why we harp on about it, me and Shannon do. But one of the things that the first thing she said was like mother-daughter relationships are some of the most complicated relationships there are.
mhm,
And like I think that's why it's so easy to see different pieces in this myth. Like you can either be happy that they're very, very close mother and daughter, or you can see it as enmeshed. You can see it as Demeter is way too fucking much when she loses her daughter, like I do.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like
and
I guess
yeah,
like the thing that it makes me think of is like yeah, you want your mom to love you and you want them to like care about bad things that are happening to you, but also in like a normal healthy sort of way.
yeah,
Like like my mom would be upset and has been upset about stuff that would happen to me, but she also like wouldn't do something that would like make me upset because she doesn't want to do that. Like there's been times where she's definitely wanted to do stuff like that, but she had like the time I remember is when I worked at my horrible like job, my horrible really bad like abusive attorney job that I when I finally told her how horrible that job was, she was like, "Can I show up and yell at them?" And I was like, "Mother, no, I'm an adult. I'm 31." Like
yeah,
like no, and she's like, "I really want to though."
yeah.
But like, you know, it's my mom. She's a Leo, like Leo's sun and moon and four other things too, but Leo's sun and moon, let's just go with that. And so she wanted to like be like get like fiery like that, but she's not actually going to do it. But I feel like if she was like Demeter, she would have shown up and yelled at my old bosses anyway and
Hmm.
not even bothered to like
My
ask
mom
me
would have.
about it beforehand. She knew I would say no, don't do that. Um, but it's just that kind of a thing. Like she'll like tell me how she feels, but she won't do something if I tell her like that's not a good idea. And that's like the more like balanced way of that. And like Demeter goes like way too far the other way because it's like how is you doing all this stuff gonna make anybody give your daughter back?
Yeah,
And it
like
becomes like a thing of like she's making more of it about her and like how upset she is about her losing her daughter than like thinking about how this affects her daughter because if you make a big thing about your daughter all the time then it just puts all of this pressure onto her and that's not a good idea either.
yeah. I actually have a few stories of my mom like doing exactly that. I'm doing way too much. I put one of them on like my old ass YouTube channel. An ex-boyfriend. I was homie hopping. I was dating one of his friends, and we coincidentally were going to dress up as the same things for
Mm-hmm.
Halloween. Like I found out after the fact, um, because I had bought an Alice in Wonderland costume. This was like you have to remember I went to high school in like 2005, 2006 was around the time this
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like a very Harajuku-esque like Alice in Wonderland costume. I was so proud of it. And then I find out that my ex-boyfriend's friend group is also doing Alice in Wonderland. And the girl from the friend group who hated me the most was going to be their Alice.
Mm.
And so they approached me after school one day and like were like, you better not come to school in that costume and kind of threatened me. I don't even remember exactly what they said, but they threatened me of like, you better not show up in that costume. And
Can
I
we
called my
relax?
mom because she was going to pick me up from school. And I was like, you know what? Look, I'm leaving. I'm going to take the bus home. And so I called her. I was like, I'm really upset this just happened. I'm going to take the bus home. And right as the bus comes to pick me up, I see my mom's car speeding towards the school. And so the girl, she wasn't exactly like she was an independent studies student somehow. So where she, the kind of thing where she'd pick up packets from school and then just do that. And so she wasn't allowed on campus again after my mom came. I wasn't there for the interaction. I never got called into the principal's office after, but I know my mom went in there and complained, and that
Hmm.
girl was no longer allowed on campus for anything after. It's like you can come to pick up your stuff, but you have to come and leave.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Who
So
knows
my
what
mom
stuff
used
your
to do
mom
shit
made
like
up?
that.
I feel like she made some shit up.
I have no idea what she said, but yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that. It didn't creep into job stuff so much. Like of course she was a little bit more on it with that, but health stuff, like when I started getting really sick, this is a story I feel like I've told on my TikTok somewhere, where she came back from a medical appointment with me, and she looked over at my bookshelf, and I had books on astrology, and she was like, you know, that's probably why this is happening, right? Because she's super duper religious. So,
Yep,
um,
it's all because you have a Leo sun, and now
I
you
was
know
like, if
that
your God is
you're
going to
damned for
punish me,
life.
if your God is going to punish me with stomach issues for having books, um, I don't think he's benevolent. Sorry.
My
I think I might have even said that to her at that point because, like, I would engage with the religion argument more than I should have. I probably at some point should have stopped engaging with it, but I was like, maybe if I can make a good enough theological argument against her, she'll realize she can't win me over on this one. Nope, doesn't matter. I'm never winning this battle.
Yeah. And like on reverse, I was just thinking about how my mom was out of town for a week and she came back like late last night and she was texting me today when I was working being like, "Can I come over tomorrow and give you a care package?"
Oh,
And I'm like, she's like, "Oh my God, yeah, of course you can come over and give me a present." And so I can see you and she usually brings something back from whenever they go anywhere. Um,
mhm.
and she was just like, "I'll text you tomorrow and tell you what time I can come. I'll come by so you know." And it's just like she's not even she's like asking me permission. Am I allowed to come over and give you a present? Like what if once I was like, what would you do if I said no? Like what is
Just
wrong
like,
with me if I
okay.
said if I'm like, no, you can't go over here and come give me a gift from Montana, which is where they were for the last like week or whatever. But I was just
Yeah.
like, but either way, she just like asked for that stuff if it's okay to do that stuff before doing it, or she'll be like, "Can I
That's
take
super
you
sweet.
grocery shopping and buy you food?" And I'm like, yeah, you can do
Please
that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's fine. But it's just funny how she like asks everything first. Instead of just being like, "We're gonna do this." She's like, "Are you okay with this?" And I'm like, "Yes." Like when she bought me like plane tickets to go see you, which is something that happened, she was like,
Yeah.
"Is it okay if I do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's really fine."
Yeah.
I said to her, like, "Are you literally asking me if it's okay that you buy me plane tickets to go see Mandy finally, and also Rick Riordan?" Like,
Yeah,
oh my
we so we haven't announced that on this pod. That's probably a good place to end this episode. Is like we are going to actually close the distance and see each other for once. Rick Riordan's coming to Redwood City, which is about like 40 minutes away from me. And so Shannon's coming, and we're gonna go see Rick Riordan together. We got our tickets. It's him and I always forget how to say his last
Oshiro,
name. Oshiro, yes. And so they will both be there. It's to promote, it's
their
not The
book.
Sun and the Star. What was
No,
the
it's the
next one
next
called?
book, Court of the
Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah, Court of the Dead. So, and I feel a little bad that I'm not close to that book yet, but it'll still be a good event.
It's okay. Like
Yeah.
it's really it's fine. And
Yeah.
either way, it's going to be fun because it's not like there won't be people asking like what's going on with Sea of Monsters? What's going
Yeah.
because it'll be like a month before it airs. And like what's going on with Titan's Curse? Who's what's Nico like and and all that kind of stuff. You know that everyone will be asking them because when you bought a ticket, you can like ask a question. I don't even remember what I said anymore. But I know
Yeah.
that there's going to be kids being like, "Tell me what Nico is like right now." So I
Yes.
know he's going to be talking about everything, but either way, it's just going to be really fun to just be in like the same vicinity as them, listening to them talk about whatever. Like,
Mhm.
just talk about anything. I wanted
Yeah.
to, I tried to think of a question that was like mythology related because I love listening to him talk about mythology, and I don't think
Hmm.
he gets to do it very much. But
Yeah.
I just would want to ask him about like, what do you think about this that classics people do? Like, what is your perspective on this as somebody who has a degree but spent his whole life trying to make it accessible to children? So obviously didn't like any of the elitism that
Yeah.
comes along with it usually. But either way, we're doing that. And so if you live in the general California area, in like Northern California, because that's where
Hmm.
it is, then just like message one of us and see if we can like meet up or in some way if anyone lives there.
Yeah.
Somebody has to live there. Why is everyone I'm friends with live in California?
I don't
That's
know. Yeah, we might be scattered throughout California though, so I'm not sure.
yeah. But either
Yeah.
way, that'll be fun. We'll be in the same place at
Yes.
the same time.
So we kept next podcast on Wednesday open just in case this one went over. Do we have like enough interviews and stuff we could go over maybe?
And when we started this, we said we would do 2 a week because we wouldn't talk as long.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We still talk just as long, just now it's twice a week.